major focus and major lifeblood of every major business is what? Capital, correct? Great. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about that today. In all the campaigns that you guys are looking to do, it's a necessity to pay for cash. We talk all the time about people that are out there that say that they have too much money. There's no such thing as too much money. If you guys have too much money, then I will give you my bank account, and you guys can start making deposits, okay? You don't have too much money. Bill Gates doesn't have too much money. Charlie Unger doesn't have too much money. Warren Buffett doesn't have too much money. If you say you do not have too much money, it's because you're thinking like a poor person, okay? There's good debt and there's bad debt. If you're going to run your business, you do not use your returns on your investment to invest in your business. The returns that come inside your business ventures go into investments for yourself and for your family. Does that make sense? The debt instruments that you use go to make money that then bring out capital to pay off your debt instruments, and then the return off those that return off your business ventures go to invest more into your business. Okay? So, without further ado, what I'm going to do is bring up the man of the hour, talking about being able to get you capital. Everybody give him a warm welcome to Mr. Joshua Trent.
Okay, excellent. As Nick had mentioned, I'm going to be speaking about how to gain access to capital. A lot of people think it's extremely difficult. If I hadn't been in this industry for so long, I would think so as well. But as the slides show, we're going to be talking about unsecured business credit, our unsecured business credit line of program for business owners, entrepreneurs, startups, real estate investors, basically you name it, we'll be able to help you get the capital. About our programs, first off, Wealth Structure International, we connect business owners, and like I said, business owners, entrepreneurs, real estate investors, basically anybody with working capital, helping them acquire anywhere from $25,000 upwards of $750,000 or more in freely spendable, unsecured business credit lines. Now, what does that mean? No collateral, in many cases, no financials, no tax returns. Okay? So money that you can use, and I say this, for any lawful purpose, all right? I'm not in the drug funding business. So, documentation can range anywhere from no documentation, literally no documentation, all the way up to full documentation. Obviously, the more documentation you can provide, the more the more funds that you can acquire for credit lines. One of the big things too is these credit lines do not report to your personal credit. All right. Now, why is that important? Well, first off, as you know, personal credit. If you start to max out your credit lines, what happens? Your credit score starts to tank. Banks don't want to start lending to you. And in many cases, if you're completely maxed out, they'll start cutting any other credit lines that you currently have. With the way that we set it up and structure it, these do not report to your personal credit, which is perfect for the business owner, because what if you all of a sudden need to run a campaign and you all of a sudden need to max out that credit line to fund your campaign? Well, you can do so and not have to worry about your credibility. A couple of statistics that I find are interesting. First off, 80%, approximately 80% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years. Now, a positive spin on that means that 20% of them actually survive and prosper. Yes, exactly, you guys. I thought you said less. I'm like, well, I don't know, it's statistics, right? Okay, next thing, top 10 reasons listed by the SBA. I only put the top 2 because for me those are the most important. Number 1 reason people fail, lack of experience. Obviously, with the training and the coaching that you guys have in this group, you'll be able to overcome that problem. But number 2, insufficient funds. The average startup, and again, this is an SBA, the Small Business Administration. Statistically speaking, they say that the average startup costs $80,000 a year is needed to run that business. The problem is most business owners are a little overconfident, and what do they say? Oh, I can get it done for $5,000. Okay, all right. Is that possible? Absolutely. In some cases, but in most cases, it's not, statistically speaking. They also, again, they underestimate the amount of capital that's needed to be able to reach the cash flow break-even point. In other words, a lot of them spend money to get their business up and running, and then it takes a while for that profit to get to a certain point to where you start to break even, and then you're actually starting to make money. And the problem is, right before they get to that, what happens? They run out of money, and they can't fund their business anymore. They probably tapped out all the family members that they know and friends, made a few enemies in the process, and then the business fails. So I want you to write down this question, all right? What would access to $25,000, $50,000, $100,000, $750,000 in the next 30 days do for your business? Okay, think about that. Now, the whole purpose of this presentation is meat and potatoes. I'm going to go straight to it, exactly what you need to do to get the funding, okay? Not the fluff, nothing like that. So the purpose of this presentation, we're going to talk about the requirements to get funding, so that way you know exactly what to do to be able to get it quickly. Also, just to go ahead and let you know, we've done some small meetings in this group. I say we. Well Structured International has done some small meetings, around different parts of the country. And just from those small meetings in the last few weeks, we've gotten people pre-qualified for over $1.5 million, okay? For people that have been looking for money, that have been turned down, that haven't been able to get money, we've literally been able to do that just with a small group. So we're very good, we're very efficient at what we do. We know how to be able to get it done. Like it says there, we can get you from point A to point Z, which I consider point Z, retirement. You never want to work again if you don't have to. And again, we're also going to teach you how to be able to gain access to the funds without collateral, without documentation. Most business owners, when they walk into the bank, and I know this because I speak with them all day long, the first thing the bank says, well, we can do this, we just have to collateralize your property and all of your other assets and your firstborn. And so we'll teach you how to be able to get away with that. Okay. Let's see here. All right, real quick, I want to give you some examples so that way you can see real life how this applies to you, okay? Most of you are business owners, but like most business owners, you probably have your hands on a few other investments and other things like that. So let's talk about the real estate investor. True case. Met with the real estate investor. The guy had $10,000. Hey, I want to get involved in real estate. I want to buy cash. I want to buy properties cash. All right, well then go to Detroit, because those are the only properties I know that are less than $10,000. And you'll have to also include the rehab and a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's all he had was $10,000. So what we did is we actually taught him, and well, not just taught him, we actually got him, and in less than 30 days, we got him qualified for over $50,000. Whereas if he had to just spend his time working and saving and saving and saving and saving, it probably would have taken more time to be able to get, years and years to get to that point where he would have that money necessary to do cash purchases, to have the money to do rehabs, everything else associated with the real estate. And by then, the market might have completely changed, and he wouldn't be able to take advantage of a great market, which I think personally is a great market. Startup business owner. Okay, somebody's got a dream. All right? I have my vision. I'm going to be the next Yahoo, the next Google, the next whatever. I just don't have the money. Okay? And my mom and dad love me, but they no longer want to fund me any more business because this is actually my 10th business idea that I'm going to be highly successful with. Well, what we can do is we can actually take that business owner and be able to give him the startup capital that he needs, be able to get the funding from the financial institutions without being able to have to provide any financials or any tax returns because they don't have them. And if they do, they probably look very ugly. And so we can be able to get them the funding. Existing businesses. We have existing businesses all the time. One of our biggest referral network are business bankers, believe it or not. I have business bankers calling me all day long. Hey, Josh, client X, Y, and Z came into our office today. Unfortunately, they don't meet our requirements of 2 years minimum in business, financials, tax returns, collateral, and firstborn. Okay, well then, here's what we have to do. So they send the client to me, and we actually can go ahead and get them funding. One of the biggest problems with existing businesses is what do business owners try to do to minimize their tax returns? Write off as much as they can. And what happens when you write off as much as you can? You make no money, apparently, to any banking institution. Or you have declining revenue. We've actually had clients who their gross revenues are going up each year, but guess what? They're showing losses every year. And that's great. They're not having to pay any taxes, but they're not fundable because banks see Banks, the first thing they ask is, how are you going to pay us this money back? You're losing money in your business every single year. Well, no, I'm not. I just write off for taxes. Well, that doesn't work for us. So, existing businesses, we can help you get the funding because we don't have to provide those financials. We don't have to provide those tax returns, or we can actually work with experts to be able to show you how to structure those properly. Investors, entrepreneurs, individuals like yourself. Let's say you come across a fantastic investment deal. Hey, if I have 50 grand, I can put this in, I can flip it, make a whole bunch of money on this. Hey, Dad, can I borrow 50 grand? What? Yeah, okay. Trust me, it's not fun to borrow money from family. So the biggest thing, startup entrepreneur, this allows you the ability to be able to go in there. You don't have to go in with a business plan, okay? No business plans here, all right? This allows you the ability to go in, get the capital, get the funding that you need to take advantage of that investment. Also, here's one thing important too. These are credit lines. How many of you know the difference between a credit line and a loan? Okay, a loan is basically, here's $50,000, here's the payments over the next 60 months. At the end of that time, it's paid off in full. But guess what? Whether you're using that 60 grand or not, you have that monthly payment that you have to make. Credit line, on the other hand, like a credit card, you're only paying on what you're using. If you're not using anything, you're not paying anything. So as an entrepreneur, let's say you want to go ahead and run a marketing campaign. You charge up that money, you run the marketing campaign, you make $1 million, you pay off that line of credit. Guess what? It's still available there for your next marketing campaign when you want to go ahead and do it, but you're not paying just to maintain it, to keep it available to yourself. So those are some ideas of point A to point Z, how this applies directly to you. All right. Funding information. For the business funding, believe it or not, you have to have a business. I don't know, a lot of times people don't understand that. You have to have a business entity, LLC or corporation. Sole proprietors will work, but we always recommend that you do structure some sort of business entity because a lot of times you'll get a lot more funding. And banks, sometimes they look at sole proprietors just as individuals rather than a business entity, and so they will give you personal funding rather than the business funding. Again, the advantage of the personal funding, or of the business funding, doesn't show on your credit. You need to have a qualified individual with a strong credit profile. Do we have programs for individuals with bad credit? Absolutely. But a strong credit profile is required for the unsecured business lines of credit. And then also requirements range anywhere from no documentation to full documentation. Now, one thing I want to point out here, and this is very important, for individuals that are not U.S. citizens, okay, foreign individuals, we have programs to be able to get you funding. And obviously, the experts at our offices will talk to you more about this, but the way that it works is you actually have to acquisition an existing business here in the U.S. to be able to do it. So let me run you through an example. Joe has a pizza shop. That pizza shop's been operating for years. Joe's looking to retire. He's interested in selling off his business. We can help you acquire that business, come in, and then use that business to be able to get funding for your business. Does that mean you have to make pizzas? No. You can change the function of the business. That's part of what we do is we help register that appropriately and properly. But we have to acquisition that existing business to be able to help you get the funding that we need. Is it a little trickier? Absolutely. But can it be done and help you get the funding that you need? Absolutely. Because I know that there's a lot of foreign clients listening to this presentation and also currently here as well. Okay, benefits. First off, credit separation. One of the biggest things, and you're going to hear from some awesome individuals later on. I mean, I'm awesome too, but they're really cool. They are going to talk to you about running a business like a business. Have any of you ever heard of commingling funds? Bad idea, okay? Unfortunately, the majority of business owners, and I talk to business owners all day long, they treat their business bank account like their personal bank, or they use their personal credit cards to fund business activities. All of this stuff can lead to a judge or some other attorney being able to prove that you're not running your business like a business. And if you're not running your business like a business, is it a business? No. I mean, it is technically a business, but it's not a corporation or a business entity to protect your assets, okay? Credit separation, this allows you to be able to have business credit that does not report to your personal credit, okay? Also, minimizing fees associated with this. Personal credit a lot of times can be extremely expensive. We can also maximize your tax benefits. Business entities have and again, I'm not going to go into too much detail because the gentleman later on will do this, but business entities have massive amount of tax deductions available, whereas individuals, it's minimal, the tax deductions that are possible. You know, so the cost of acquiring credit lines or interest on these things can be written off. They can be taken care of as business expenses when structured correctly. Also, achieve and maintain excellent personal credit profile. Most of the clients that we work with, if they maintain these credit lines, we see an average boost in their credit score of anywhere from 30 to 40 to 50 points sometimes. And it's always fun to call up a client and be like, hey, remember your score was 730? Yeah, well, guess what? Now it's 780. What? It's great. So it allows the ability to be able to do that. Now, with regards to the terms of these credit lines, first off, they're open credit lines like we talked about. They're not loans. So with open credit lines, you can use them, you can not use them, but they're there and they're available for the use. Most of these we can get 0% introductory interest rates on. What? Yeah, sorry. Thank you, gentlemen. 0% introductory interest rates on these things, okay? For the first 12 to 18 months sometimes. Now, imagine 0%. You plug it into an investment that makes a tremendous amount of money. What's your return on that? Exactly, because it costs you nothing to do, right? Okay, once that's done, the interest rate's on average anywhere between prime plus 2 to prime plus 12. People are like, what's prime? It's the way a rib comes, or steak, right? No. Steak plus 2. No, on average, the interest rates can be anywhere from, for the larger credit lines, 6, 7%. For the unsecured other type of credit lines, you're looking probably around anywhere from 8 to 10%, depending on how strong the credit profile is. Again, we can also do personal funding, because a lot of times people are like, well, what if I don't want to do business funding? I just want to do personal funding. Absolutely, we can go ahead and do it. It's got some advantages, but it also has a lot more disadvantages, because you can't take advantage of the stuff that's associated with the business. Okay, so let's get into it. No-doc business funding. First program that we talk about, these are business credit cards. Now, a lot of times people are like, well, I don't want credit cards. Well, let me tell you one thing. First off, the SBA says credit cards are the top of all financial choices for small business owners, okay? Because they're the easiest to qualify for, and you can do so without any financial documentation, all right? Also, just to go ahead and let you know, by using us, we know where to go to be able to get the right type of business credit cards that are business cards, which means they do not report to your personal credit. There's tons of financial institutions, oh, we offer business funding, great. You get it, shows up on your personal credit. Well, that doesn't help you out, okay? These are business cards that are attached to your EIN number with your business, all right? So we know how to structure that. We know where to go. We know how to do this properly. Also, using us, most clients receive a minimum 50% higher approvals on the amount of funding that they actually get, simply because of our relationship with the financial institutions. We know how to structure the deals properly. Okay, second thing, what is this? New and existing businesses can work, okay? As I talked about before, sole proprietors, it's kind of hit and miss. We prefer that you establish a business entity because banks look more favorable for them, but it can be a brand new business. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to go out there and see what type of business funding experts are out there. There's a lot of garbage out there. You know, people will try to sell you corporations that you don't need to accomplish the purpose that you want to accomplish. Now, sometimes, you know, we take a look at it and see what you want to accomplish and tell you what you need to accomplish that. But in all honesty, if you've got the strong credit profile that the bank is looking for, the business can be brand spanking new. I mean, literally a day old, and we can go ahead and get you funding, get you submitted, get you anywhere from $25,000 upwards of $150,000 within a 30-day period. Brand new business entity, no financials, no collateral, no tax returns. Okay. Well, look, I'm jumping ahead. I don't even know this. All right. Again, funding timeline, typically within the first 30 days, we can get anywhere from $25,000. The biggest amount we've ever gotten in a 30-day period on the no-doc program is $150,000 for an individual. Okay? Here's the beautiful part about the business funding, though. If you go down to number 3, you can do multiple rounds of business funding. That's what's beautiful. Personal funding, you do one round, you're dead for a 6 to 12-month period, because the banks will see, hey, this guy just got $100,000. We don't want to loan to him. Look at all this money he just got. Kind of odd. They don't want to loan money to people that need it. Whereas business funding, we can actually submit you through multiple rounds to maximize the funding capability. That's why we always encourage you, set up a business entity because, again, it'll maximize the business funding. Also, as I talked about, the average funding, we get higher approvals, and we also get higher approvals on the submissions that we do with banks. Most clients, and I know you guys have had this experience because I've seen the hands, but most clients, banks approve less than 10% of submissions for business funding. Less than 10%, which means more than likely, you know, if I were to send 10 of you into a bank, 9 of you would get rejected. The 10th one might get funding, and it's probably not going to be that great. So that's the difference with using us. Also, with regards to a business entity, businesses can grow their capital a lot faster, and they can increase their amount of capital tremendously. Whereas an individual, it's limited. You know, I mean, some of the best credit profiles that I've seen, the individuals might have $100,000 worth of credit card available, but that kind of taps it out. Guess what? For a business, $100,000 is nothing. You know, banks are willing to lend $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, as long as you grow it and maintain it correctly. They'll give. Well, I mean, heck, man, some business entities out there probably have credit lines for billions of dollars. Okay, what is required? First off, now again, we'll walk you through all of this, but the first thing that you need to do is actually set up a credit profile with credit check total. We will provide you a guide on how to pull your credit. Cost $1 to be able to do so. Takes you 5-10 minutes to do so. And what we need is the login information, because we log in there and we actually do a credit analysis. It takes us about 24 to 48 hours to do the analysis, but we'll tell you whether or not your credit profile qualifies for the funding that you're looking for. If it doesn't, we'll tell you the reason why, how to fix it, or what can be done to be able to get it. The ideal credit score and credit profile that you're looking at, something above 680 in all 3 credit bureaus preferably. Okay? Now, this is the ideal. So as you see, it says there, no bankruptcies, very few late payments, no collections. Guess what? We just got funding for somebody that had a bankruptcy on there. We just got funding for somebody that had collections, that had judgments. The thing is, we always want to see your credit profile, because if you've had those things before in the past, but you've reestablished your credit over the last 5 years or so, and you've done a good job doing it, guess what? We can go ahead and get you funding. Let's see here. Another thing, too, I know I talk about family all the time and never borrow money from family. Okay, well, guess what? You're not borrowing their money. You're borrowing their credit, which is even better. No. Okay. Credit partners, all right? The financial institutions will allow us to be able to use a credit partner. So let's say husband's credit, guess what? Stinks, right? Because, man, horrible managing money. Just kidding. No. Wife's credit, excellent. You guys are in this business venture together. Guess what? We can go ahead and get funding using the wife's credit. You know, or let's say you have a business partner and the business partner has great credit, you have horrible credit. The business partner can go ahead and get the funding. We can go ahead and structure these deals. And also we can help people to resolve their current credit issues. You know, a lot of people's credit just collapsed when the market collapsed, the housing market. So we can help you with getting back on track. The documentation that we will need. Okay, we will need a color copy. Now, we don't need all this up front, okay? Initially, just fill out the application that's there, pull your credit report, we can go ahead and get you pre-qualified. But once that happens, here's the additional documentation that we'll need for the no-doc loan. Kind of ironic, right? When I say no-doc, I mean the business, okay? As far as financials. We do need to have a copy of the Social Security card, driver's license, and a color copy of your utility bill. These are, the lenders actually ask for this. They have to actually make sure that you are who you say you are and that somebody's not trying to steal your identity and commit fraud. Also, we need to have the articles of the incorporation and the SS4 form. That's the one that has the EIN number. We can show you, what these are, for example. Then potentially a corporate resolution. That's usually only in the case of you needing a credit partner. Again, we will provide you all this documentation. We're very good at being able to do that. It's easy to walk through the process. And lastly, any additional documentation if the bank requires it. Sometimes we'll submit it. Sometimes they don't need this information, but sometimes they come back and say, hey, we want copies of the articles of incorporation or something like that. And we'd like to have it on hand so that way we can immediately submit it into it, get an immediate qualification, and get you the funding. All right, the next one. This is the program for Full Doc. This is for businesses that have been in business for at least 2 years. They have financials, they have tax returns, and they're pretty strong. Again, if you have a company that shows $20 million in gross revenue, but you're losing money, once you adjust that and you show your net as a loss of $200,000, doesn't look good. So we call this the unsecured bank draft program just because we had to give it a different name because people were like, I need credit lines. Well, which ones? So First off, it extends cash available in a business checking account. So the borrower has check writing capabilities. These are literally lines of credit that you can just write checks against. If you want to go buy a house cash, or you want to run a campaign and need to write a $50,000 check out for the campaign, you can do so. Lines usually carry a lower interest rate as banks view these as fairly low risk. Okay, on average, the interest rate is probably right now about 5-6%. The ideal working capital, these are ideal for working capital, payroll, improving cash flow, paying down personal debt, and refinancing debt in some cases. That's another thing, too. A lot of times individuals take their personal debt, transfer it onto the business debt. Why? Because that makes your personal credit profile look stellar. Lines require no collateral. Again, fantastic. And are guaranteed by the borrower personally. Now, what does that mean? Guess what happens if you don't pay your bills? Do you think the bank's going to say, that's okay, we don't want the money? Probably not, right? So that you have to guarantee it personally, so they will come after you because you have guaranteed it personally. But guess what? Just pay your bills. Keep everything up on time. The lines report to business credit history only, again, not to your personal credit. So as we help you develop out your business credit profile, which I always recommend, and what I mean by business credit profile is businesses have credit profiles just as individuals have credit profiles. The most common one that people hear of is Dun & Bradstreet, but there's also Business Equifax and Experian and Telescore, okay? And the banks the lenders are a lot more looking at Business Equifax and Experian and Telescore because Dun & Bradstreet can be so easily manipulated, which I think is ironic. And so we will help you be able to do that. All right, funding amounts. Available funding anywhere from $25,000 to $150,000 per financial institution. Now, sometimes I get people saying, I want $1 million from one bank. Okay, guess what? They're going to want collateral. They're going to want your firstborn. They're going to want all this stuff. What we're experts in are figuring out what the thresholds are for each banking institution to be able to get you the funding that you need at the right interest rate with no collateral whatsoever. Okay, so sometimes in order to be able to get you that $1 million, we are going to have to go to a few different financial institutions to be able to reach that goal. All right? Cost, it's zero, it doesn't cost anything to start the process. Well, that's not true. We don't charge anything, but you might actually have to pay for the credit monitoring service or from different credit reporting services in order for us to be able to find out. Why do we have you pull from those? Let me tell you why. Those are soft pulls. In other words, we can check your credit without having to have an inquiry show up on your credit report. We can also use that to show the banking institutions and say, hey, based on this credit profile, can this person get pre-qualified? Because we don't want just to shop you around and have you get a whole bunch of inquiries and not get any money. We want to make sure that the banking institution says, okay, you know what? Yes, we'll give this person X amount of money as long as his credit profile is what it is when we actually pull it. So it gives us the ability not only to get you pre-qualified with the financial institutions for the funding, but it also gives something else, and I totally forgot what it was. No, it also gives us the ability to monitor and make sure that the credit lines are reporting correctly, and also track and see which banking institution is pulling from what type of credit bureau. All right? Okay. Requirements. All right, this is important to know. First off, more than 2 years minimum time in business, okay? 5-year credit history of the business owner. What that means is your business credit profile should have at least 5 years of credit history on it. So, somebody that only has a small credit history might not work. Annual sales on the business. Again, these are estimations. If you have this, send it over. But usually we like to see $250,000 or greater in gross revenues, and that it's increasing over time. If it's decreasing, sometimes that creates an issue with full documentation. Net revenues, we like to see a minimum net revenues of $70,000 a year or more. Again, if you show your net revenues as $10, the bank's going to say, well, how's this guy going to pay the loan back? All right? All owners can participate, or if some owners have issues, we can actually structure it for funding purposes to be able to help them get the funding necessary. Credit partners aren't allowed on these, and the reason why is this. You get somebody who hasn't been associated with the business for the last 2 years to come on as a credit partner, and then the banks are looking at the tax returns. The first thing they're going to say is, where's this person on the tax returns for the last 2 years? And I've had somebody ask me, well, can't we just go ahead and put them on there? Yeah, fraud's not a problem. Do it all day long. No. You can't do that stuff. Bad idea. I mean, you can, but bad idea. Get you a striped suit. Funding industries vary by region. So we need to know where you're at, what the industry is, everything like that. What I ask from you is whenever you fill out an application, please fill it out as just fully as possible. Reason being, a lot of times people put the bare minimum information, and the problem is that inhibits us from being able to actually tell you like what all the possibilities are for funding. Because sometimes I'll come back, and here's the thing too, with full documentation, your credit can actually be a little bit more beat up than on the no-doc loan. So a lot of times people will submit an application and they might not qualify for the no-doc, and then first thing I do is I look at the applications to see what the revenues are in the business, and guess what? There's nothing on there. So I have to call them up and say, hey, what are your revenues with your business? You know, how long has it been around for? Because if they have the financials, then we can go ahead and change it up, submit for full doc. Okay, requirements. Not only do we need to have you pull from credit check total, but we actually have to have you pull just a credit report from MyFICO. Again, we'll provide all these instructions. Again, it helps us with analyzing it, and it's what the bankers want to see. Last 2 years, personal and business tax returns have to be filed and have to be available. No derogatory credit marks in the past 12 months. Again, well, actually, no. If your credit's bad, like if you totally messed it up in the last 12 months, probably not going to happen for funding. You want to have a clean personal credit history, but again, just submit it over and we can work with it. All right. Oh, documentation that we're going to need. Again, we'll provide you with this list, but 2 years business, 2 years personal tax returns, a personal financial statement, current year-to-date financial statement, year-to-date accounts receivables and payables if they're applicable, a business debt schedule, articles of organization or incorporation or business filing, organization of fictitious name, and a copy of the driver's license. And most business owners, you should probably already have that. All right, let's see here. Kind of already went over all that stuff. But we will go ahead and submit all the information to you that you need. Here's some examples of funding. The largest single unsecured credit line that we've been able to get obtained for a client was $500,000 from one financial institution. Okay? Again, we knew what we could be able to do to be able to get it done for them. Largest unsecured funding to date was $750,000, but we actually have one right now that's going to be closer to the million. But that came from 3 different lending sources: one from $200,000, one for $250,000, and a third for $300,000 in funding. And again, keep in mind that we're talking about truly unsecured money where there is no UCC or collateral taken against the business. Again, we can't guarantee any, the outcomes. I can't say, yes, you will get this, because it's up to the financial institution. But again, this money can be used for whatever purpose you need it for, lawful purpose that you need it for. If it's unlawful, don't tell me. All right. No-doc personal funding. Again, we can do the no-doc. No-doc personal funding, basically credit cards. But again, because of our relationships in financial institutions, we can usually net you out a significant amount more funding than if you went ahead to do it on your own. Basically, you just have to have a strong credit profile. We can get it done for you. Let's see here. What else do I want to tell you about it? With regards to personal funding, kind of breaks down the credit profile. But with regards to personal funding, again, the reason why I prefer the business funding is because we can do multiple rounds and the business can grow a lot faster. Personal funding, again, we'll get you the $100,000, $150,000 that you need, but all of that's going to show up on your personal credit profile, which means you're not going to be able to get any more funding for at least 6 to 12 months. And I'm very adamant about letting people know that because, I don't want somebody, calling me up a month later, hey, I'm trying to get this loan. Guess what? No, you're not going to get the loan. So light doc personal funding. What this requires is same thing as the no doc, but it requires a pay stub or a W-2. Okay? If you can provide a pay stub or a W-2, if it's strong enough, then these are actual credit lines. Okay, not credit cards, but credit lines with check writing capability. One thing about the credit cards, again, we also know which financial institutions to go to that those credit cards have check writing capability at the 0% interest rate. So let's say we get you a $20,000 card and you need to access that. Boom, you can go ahead, write a $20,000 check. And then we have a whole bunch of other techniques that you can use to be able to minimize your payments, and it's pretty neat. I'll tell you some more about it later. Okay, credit profile, same thing. Personal funding, full doc personal funding, basically the bank's going to require that you sign a document called a 4506T, which means they're going to go in there, check your tax returns with the IRS. And as long as the tax returns look strong enough and your credit profile looks strong enough, they'll go ahead and issue some credit lines. Credit, same thing. All right, use of funds. Again, basically any lawful purpose, but just thought I'd break it down here for you. Working capital, investment capital, equipment and office supplies, real estate investing related costs, down payments, rehabs, holding costs, interest payments, equipments, materials, closing costs, funding of campaigns, being able to cover the cost of click on a type of campaign. So I mean, basically, just keep it legal. Do whatever you want with it. Again, ideal credit qualifications. I won't go over these again. The biggest thing that we see on credit profiles that are good is sometimes the debt utilization is a little high. And what I mean by debt utilization is credit card has $10,000 limit, balance is $9,999. Okay, that means it's 99.99% utilization. The banks usually like to see 30% utilization or lower. Okay, so what that means is $10,000 card, you're only using a maximum of $3,000. Little trick of the trade here is we're able to take you. I swear I didn't hit that, right? I don't know where that boom came from. So we're able to go ahead and take somebody and restructure the type of debt that they have from revolving type debt to an installment type debt. The banks look at that completely differently, and be able to, so that way if you can't write a check for your own for $20,000 to pay down your debt, we actually set it up as a debt consolidation loan and just change the form of your debt from revolving to installment. And that actually cleans up your credit profile, causes your score to go up, and gives you the ability to be able to qualify for business funding. Banks are kind of funny like that, but that's just the way it works. Okay, some additional services that we offer. I mean, we're going to talk about a tremendous amount more, but on the funding side of it, we do have funding programs for credit scores as low as 520, okay? But they require high-yielding, highly profitable businesses to be able to get it, and the money's not that cheap. Okay, it's not like, I mean, it's not going to be mafia vig type money, but you're still going to be looking at like 12 to 30% interest a year. So you won't lose your kneecaps. And again, with regards to if you have credit issues, personal credit issues, just feel free to go ahead and send over your credit profile anyway. We'll analyze it and we'll tell you what needs to be done, how to correct it, and also how to rebuild your credit too. A lot of times people, when they go to rebuild their credit, okay, this advice is free from me right now, okay, just so you know. Not charging you for the next part here. With regards to building your business credit profile, there are things called secured loans or shared secured loans from financial institutions where basically you're providing the money that they're loaning right back to you. Because a lot of times people, when they go to rebuild their credit, they go to these banking institutions that are basically, they'll give you a $350 limit, but they're going to charge you $100 for applying for the card. The interest rate's 30%, and but guess what? It starts to rebuild and establish your credit. Whereas with secured loans, and you can do this both on business and personal funding, which is how we can help you really create a bulletproof business credit profile. But on the personal side of it, you can actually go into the banking institution and say, here's $1,000. They'll deposit it into a CD more than likely, and then they'll immediately issue you a loan for $1,000 right back. So literally the money's left your, I mean, they have to deposit. It's funny. They take your money, and they bring your money right back. But all of a sudden, guess what? Now you have a $1,000 credit line or loan showing up on your installment loan showing up on your credit report, okay? And as long as you make the payments on that, you're golden. Interest rates are so low right now, you can do that. Here's the funny thing, though. You take that $1,000, you go to bank XYZDF, all of a sudden that $1,000 has turned into $5,000 worth of CDs and $5,000 worth of installment loans that are now reporting to your credit report. All right? Kind of funny how that works. So those are ways to be able to rebuild your credit. You know, if you've got $5,000, great. You can also do it with credit cards. Now, the problem with credit cards is if you go in there, with $1,000 to get a credit card, a secured card, that's great. Now all of a sudden you've got a card reporting to your personal credit, but again, you can only use $300 of that $1,000 because you want to keep those debt ratios below 30%. So just know that that money is going to be tied up for a little bit when you do it. But again, it gives you the ability to rebuild your credit. You always want to ask the bank, does this show up on my credit as secured? Because if it shows up as secured, it doesn't carry as much weight with the financial institution. So just ask them, does this show up as secured? No? Okay, perfect. And that's a fantastic way to be able to rebuild your credit. And it's also a fantastic way to build big credit lines. If you've got $5,000 available, guess what? Go out, get 2 or 3 shared secured installment loans for $5,000, all of a sudden you look credit-worthy to financial institutions, your credit score starts to go up, and all of a sudden you're getting all these offers from financial institutions wanting to loan you money. And all you've done is kind of, I don't know, made up your credit profile. Okay, contact information. I've got business cards. I'll go ahead and hand them out. But I really appreciate your time here. Wanted to let you guys know I'm excited to work with the group here. It's a fantastic group.
Following this, guys, we're going to have lunch. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to introduce a wonderful speaker and a great man. I'm going to tell you that, just to give you a little background on him, he's a 4th degree black belt, and he was the world powerlifting champion for bench press. So you will pay your bills, okay? He's going to talk to you about compliance. I am going to tell you later that sole proprietors stink, but I want to start getting a pattern of behavior. So let's get you practicing. I want you to look at the next person at your table, and we're going to all say at the same time, sole proprietors stink. Ready? Sole proprietors stink, okay? I'm going to explain why. Not only do you not get the tax advantages, but you're not going to be able to attach to a lot of the funding that's available as a sole proprietor, okay? What I want to do right now is I want to introduce this gentleman who's going to come talk to you about running your business like a business, not commingling, and doing what you're supposed to do. That seems to be this great unfeathered thing out there that a lot of people can't get their hands around. So what I want you to do is I want you to put your hands together and welcome Tolan Ferruccio.
My name is Tolan Ferruccio, and I'm here to talk to you about corporate governance. What to do, how to protect yourself, and make sure you are protected. As you can see, I've named this corporations and LLCs the jealous mistress, or mistresses, or a mister, I guess. How many of you out there have a mistress? There you go. Well, the reason why I called it the jealous mistress is a corporation is very good to have. They offer you a lot of protection. However, if you don't treat them right, if you do not take the time to structure it correctly and to take care of it and care for it, it'll come around and turn and bite you in the ass at the least suspected time. Now, hold on. Okay. Is it moving? No? Well, as I try to fix this, I will continue with my presentation here. When I teach, whether it be the martial arts or powerlifting, I like to teach with theory, because my feeling is if you understand the theory behind something, then you can implement it and utilize it to the best of your abilities. If I only teach you a rote learning method of if A, then B, or if A, do B, then the problem is when you come about a situation that is a little different, not exactly as you were taught, then you get kind of hesitant. So I want to teach you the theory behind things so that you can implement what you learn, what you read, in the most productive and efficient way. So what I'd like to do is give you a brief, very brief history of the corporation. And this will tell you how the corporation has evolved over time in the United States, how the corporation has gone from a very limited power structure into a very broad and expansive power structure. So in 1819, the corporations in the United States were very limited in what they could do. They only could exist for a very limited purpose. They were existing only for a limited amount of time. And corporations could not own stock or property that did not fulfill their corporate identity or corporate purpose. In 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, the United States broke away from the British corporate structure. This case established corporate autonomy And this was the first case that kind of put the corporations on the road to being recognized as being an individual under the eyes of the law. What Dartmouth College did was it recognized the corporation's ability to contract, which is very important, even back in the day. Previous to that, a corporation had limited powers to contract. And in our Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, which is the contract clause, allows corporations to freely contract, to have the power to contracts. Woodward also, or Dartmouth also limited the individual state's ability to rein in a corporation, and it gave corporations broader, more expansive state powers. Then in 1886, we have Santa Clara versus the Southern Pacific Railroad. And this was what had happened was the California legislature decided that they were not going to give individual tax breaks to railroads. Well, the railroads argued that based on Dartmouth, based on the Constitution, that they should be able to get these tax incentives that individuals have. The Supreme Court held that the taxes that the legislation of California wanted to attach to the corporation was not legal. And the funny thing about this case is it was not decided that the corporation had autonomy. That had already been established. What they found was that they did not owe the taxes because they did not own the land on which the taxes were assessed. But this is the most important decision out there that was based on dicta. What dicta is kind of like a side note, a head note. It is not part of the actual case law. But the dicta said that according to the 14th Amendment, corporations are to be treated as individuals. A corporation is its own identity. It is an amalgamation of like-minded people for a common purpose. Then most recently, we hear about Citizens United. And that was an even more broad and expansive, it was more broad and expanded the corporations even more. What that held was that a corporation, like an individual, could have free speech rights, and that advocating for a particular political client or candidate was, in fact, protected free speech. Now, a lot of people think that corporations now can just give money from their general fund to any candidate they want, or that foreign corporations are going to come in and buy a particular candidate, but that's not true. In 1907, the Tillman Act, that prohibits foreign corporations and corporations in general from supporting a client through their general fund. But now, a corporation is actually recognized as an individual with individual rights. But with rights comes, obviously, responsibilities. In order to codify the idea that a corporation is an individual, 1 U.S.C., which is the congressional laws made by Congress, 1 U.S.C. Section 1 states, and I quote, "In determining the meaning of any act of Congress, unless the context indicates otherwise, the words person and whoever include corporations, companies, associations, firms, partnerships, societies, and joint stock companies, as well as individuals." So now a corporation and an individual stand on the same ground. This is what a corporate structure looks like. You have the shareholders. The shareholders own the corporation. Whether it be one shareholder or 1 million shareholders, the shareholders own the corporation. Now the shareholders, they elect the board of directors. And the election is a process similar to like many elections. If you're a shareholder, you get 1 share, 1 vote, and you vote who you want to be the directors. And the directors are, well, I'll give you an analogy later. Well, then the directors, they appoint the officers, and the officers run the corporation day to day. Again, whether it be a 1-person corporation or a 1 million shareholder corporation, the rights and responsibilities of the officers are the same. They do the everyday grunt work of managing the corporation. And then the officers, they hire the employees, and the employees do the actual work. So the analogy I like to use is a corporation is very similar to a professional football team. Not soccer for the people from Tanzania or India, but American football. And you have the shareholders who invest their time and their energy and their excitement into the team. And that team is the corporation. And then you have the board of directors. The board of directors are the coaches. They stand up from afar, and they're the generals. They say, this is what we plan to do. This is how we plan to implement it. This is our strategy. And the officers are the players. The players are actually out there on the field, running around, doing what they need to do, and they're responsible for the action on the field. Now, like a corporation, when a team doesn't do well, a lot of times the shareholders or the owner says, well, we need a new coach. Our coach just does not work. Well, then, in a corporation, the shareholders would vote out the directors, put in directors that are more like-minded with the shareholders, and hopefully, the director/coach would go on and hire better officers or players to implement the plan. So again, whether it's a one-person corporation or a million-shareholder corporation, it's all the same. You have to think of it as being the same. Just because you own your corporation and it is only you running the corporation, you being the shareholder, you being the only officers, and you being the only employee, that does not absolve you of the responsibility of running your corporation like a million-shareholder corporation. Now, these are the common corporate pitfalls. These are the things that most people do if it's a small corporation, which is called a closely held corporation, or if it's a single shareholder corporation. They commingle funds. That's the absolute #1 thing you do not want to do. The first thing a plaintiff suing a corporation will do is to check the bank accounts, because they want to see if the corporate funds have been used for personal use or personal funds have been used for corporate use. Because if you do that, you are saying, I am the corporation. I use the corporate funds to pay for my vacation, or that had nothing to do with business, or I use the corporate funds to buy myself new shoes. That's not a corporation. That's a sole proprietorship, and as we all know, that's a bad thing. So don't commingle funds. If you do have to borrow funds from your personal account, then you're going to have to go through the necessary steps to make sure that it is a legitimate business transaction. And we'll go over that a little later. Second thing is failure to hold board of director meetings. Again, if you're a single-person corporation, it seems silly to sit down and say, okay, we're going to call a board meeting today with me, myself, and I, and we're going to vote on this, and we're going to do that. But you have to do it. You have to do the specific things that all corporations do, and that's hold regular board of directors meetings. Failure to hold shareholders meetings. Again, every year shareholders have to meet to vote on the board of directors. Who do they want in the board of directors? If you are a single member or a single shareholder, it's difficult to sit around the table and say, okay, all those in favor, aye, aye, aye. I mean, it seems silly, and it does seem silly, and it is silly, but it has to be done. Failure to keep corporate resolutions. Now, anytime a corporation does something that is more than their ordinary daily business, they have to vote on it. The board of directors have to vote on it. If we're going to borrow funds for the corporation has to vote on it. Because without voting on it or deciding on it, the corporation cannot do anything, because it is an amalgamation of individuals. So when you decide that we're going to borrow money from the bank, you have to have a board meeting. At the board meeting, you have a resolution. The resolution adopts the fact that you are going to borrow X amount of dollars from Y bank, and you sign off on it. Everybody votes, even if that means just yourself or your spouse, yourself or the other director. 2 people have to vote. 2 people have to vote. And according to your bylaws, depends on whether it has to be majority, unanimous, and that's up to you. Failure to keep corporate minutes. Again, minutes tells the public what the corporation did at a certain board of directors meeting. So you have to have your corporate minutes, and your corporate minutes will say, you know, on this date, we had a board of director vote. Resolution was adopted that we're going to borrow X amount of dollars from Y bank. All those in presence voted in the affirmative, and now the corporation can go to the bank, borrow the bank. And as Josh was talking about corporate resolutions in his speech, this is what he was talking about. An actual piece of paper saying, this is what the corporation board of directors voted on. It was unanimous. We're moving forward with this idea. Now, what's the problem with not running your corporation like a corporation? Well, you're going to lose corporate status and corporate protection. And that's technically called piercing the corporate veil, meaning somebody wants to come in, kick down your corporate door and say, you are not a corporation. Because you are not a corporation, the individual that's running the corporation is personally liable for the corporate debts, corporate liabilities. And that's the exact opposite reason that you started a corporation. Corporation is there to protect you as an individual. Now, if they pierce the corporate veil, they are going to step through the corporate door and identify you as being, quote unquote, the corporation. You will be the corporation. And you will be responsible for the tax issues, any contractual liabilities, any loan amounts outstanding. And that's exactly what you don't want to do. So how do you protect yourself from having your corporate veil pierced? You do the steps of having your board meeting, having your shareholders meeting, doing your resolutions, doing your minutes. When you take your corporate, let's see, we went through that. This is a little key here on how you can maintain corporate status without driving yourselves nuts and bonkers. Now, for big corporations, obviously, they have the secretary to do this, somebody to call the meeting, et cetera. If you are a closely held corporation and it's you or you and another person, sometimes it gets tedious to call a board of directors meeting, draft up the resolutions, draft up the minutes. So what I suggest people do is have a template on your computer that has your corporate name on it, a place you fill in the date, a place you can fill in the ideas or the directions that the corporation is voting on, and have it a template just like that, where you can just fill in the blanks. And you're going to have to keep 2 copies of these in 2 separate corporate books. One corporate book at your corporate headquarters, and one corporate book at your primary place of business. If it's the same office, you have 2 sets of books in the same office, but it's the same idea of having 2 books as a corporation is required to do. Immediately after each meeting, you just sit down on the computer and you fill in or contemporaneously with your meeting, you fill it in. You fill in all the information that you need, and then you print it out. And these are the 2 copies I was talking about. Put 1 copy each in each individual corporate book. Now, a lot of people, what they want to do is they'll print out 20 corporate resolutions and have it in their book. And they'll get a pen and they'll write down, today's date, we did X, Y, and Z, and they think it's good. Well, it's good, but it's not great. And the reason for that is, if you ever get involved in a corporate battle, or you get sued as a corporation and they try to pierce the corporate veil, they will look at your handwritten documents and say, you know what, I think you guys just did this yesterday. Or I think you did this in anticipation of litigation. Therefore, this is not a valid corporate resolution. But if you do it on your computer will time and date stamp when it was initially entered into the computer. And that will show you that you have been running your corporation, and that the day you say you signed the corporate documents and the day you say you had the corporate meeting is actually the day you did it. And even if the adversary is not wise to do that, to do a computer forensic, you can go and do your own computer forensics. And you can show the court, Your Honor, this is what we have done. On this date, we held a board of directors meeting. This is the resolution. This is the minutes of the meeting. And I can prove we did that by this independent third-party computer forensics. They dug into the computer, and it shows that on the date that we say it happened, it happened. And that goes into, it's admittable under the rules of evidence. It's the business records exception to the hearsay rule. But it gives you another piece in your ammunition to say, I am a corporation, or I have a corporation, and I am not the corporation. So the benefits of a corporation is you get personal asset protection. There are different tax advantages. Things like life insurance, health insurance, travel, business-related expenses, all can be taken off from the corporate bottom line, therefore limiting your taxes. Another big thing is that your corporate business losses can be carried forward and backward, and it's not limited to the $3,000 that a sole proprietor is limited to. Another good thing about a corporation is the ease of transferring ownership. Now, if you want to buy a corporation. Let's say you wanted to go out and buy Microsoft. You would go in there and you would buy 50% plus 1 share, and you would own Microsoft. And it's not, a lot of people, you hear people say 51%. It's not 51%. It's 50% plus 1. So if it's 100 shares, it's 51 shares. It's 1 million shares, it's 500,001 share. That's a little technical, but I think it's very important to, when you talk about it, to understand that it's not 51%, it's 50% plus 1. There's no personal liability when you buy a corporation. If you're new and you're buying a corporation, you do not personally adopt the liabilities of a corporation, a properly held corporation. That's not true if you buy a sole proprietorship or a partnership. If you buy a sole proprietorship and a partnership, you may be liable for the bad deeds that they did in the past, even if you didn't know about it, including tax liabilities, contractual obligations, loan obligations. Another thing that's great about a corporation is that you do not have to divulge personal information, especially if you go through a company like WSI, where they can hold the shares in another corporation's name or an LLC's name. There is some privacy that you are afforded. Now, the privacy of owning shares is only limited to small, closely held corporations and corporations that are not publicly traded. If, and at the point that your company gets so big that it becomes a publicly traded company, then you're going to have to divulge the ownership of your shares. If you own more than 5% of a publicly traded company, you're going to have to file what they call a 13D with the SEC that says, Tolan owns 5% of Microsoft, or anything greater than 5%. Also, if you are a shareholder of a publicly traded company, if you hold the shares in your own name, the transfer agent, the people that handle the shares, actually have your name on a list. It's called a noble list, and that doesn't have privacy. But if it's a closely held corporation, you have a lot of privacy. Credit, as Josh talked, I'm not even going to go over this because Josh did such a fantastic job. Corporations can get their own credit on their own identity. When you do capital funding, selling shares of a corporation is a lot easier than bringing on new members on an LLC or bringing on new partners in a partnership. However, when you sell shares to raise money for a corporation, it requires compliance with both Federal Securities and Exchange Commission rules and regulations, and also your state regulations. So you make sure you go and you find qualified counsel that can help you raise money by selling shares. You cannot just go out on the street corner and say, hey, you want to buy $10 worth of stock? You want to be part of my company? Can't do that. It's called an unregistered offering. Now, what is a limited liability company? Well, a limited liability company is a hybrid. It is a mix of a corporation and a partnership. The definition of what an LLC is, it's an unincorporated association of individuals. Again, it's a group of people with like-minded goals, like-minded ideas that want to do like-minded things. Now, the difference between a corporation and an LLC is, while a corporation has shares and a board of directors, an LLC has what they call members, because, again, it is an unincorporated association of individuals. Common pitfalls of having the LLC veil pierced is the same thing as a corporation. Failure to hold member meetings, failure to make corporate resolutions, corporate minutes. Everything that you would have to do for a corporation, you have to do for an LLC. And again, if you're a single member, you sit at the table, you vote for yourself, you vote by yourself. It's a lot easier that way, but you have to do your resolutions and your minutes. If the corporate LLC veil, or if the LLC veil is pierced, it's a similar thing to what happens when a corporate veil is pierced. You open yourself up to personal liability. And the reason why you get an LLC is to insulate you. So if you do not run your corporation or your LLC like a corporation or an LLC, you are removing all the advantages that you initially anticipated and opening yourself personally. And again, that includes tax liability. Benefits of a LLC as opposed to a C corporation. Again, you have the corporate protection, you have limited liability for corporate debts. But the thing with the LLC is you can elect how you want to be taxed. you can be taxed as a sole proprietor. You can be taxed as a partnership. Your LLC can be taxed as an S corporation, or it can be taxed as a C corporation. That's the flexibility an LLC gives you. Another beautiful thing about an LLC is you can have a structured LLC. Say you're a real estate investor, and you have 10 pieces of property that you want to sell. Now, what some people do is they have one LLC that holds all 10 properties. That's some protection, but that's not enough protection. What you would want to do is you want to put each individual property into its own LLC. And the reason for that is, let's say of the 10 pieces of property you have, somebody slips and falls in your first property. Well, they're going to sue that property, but then they're going to also sue the LLC other 9 properties. And you're leaving your 9 properties exposed. However, if you partition each property into an LLC, they can only attack what's in that LLC, again, if you ran it like a proper LLC. So think about that. And members of an LLC may be individuals, corporations, or other LLCs. It doesn't have to be just you. Your corporation can be a member of the LLC. Now, if there's personal liabilities, we talked about personal protection with the corporate veil and the LLC veil. What a lot of people don't think about is what happens if the individual who owns the LLC or who owns the corporation gets sued personally, either through car accident or another tort. What's going to happen to the LLC and to the corporation? Well, what happens is you will be personally liable on a personal level for the amounts that you owe to the person that you committed the tort on in the car accident, the victim of the car accident. Well, what if your personal funds cannot fund that? What if there's $1 million judgment against you and you only have $100,000 in the bank? Well, they're going to try to go against your LLC membership or your shares in a corporation. That's what they call a charging order. If you are in a personal lawsuit and you have a judgment against you, what a charging order does is it directs, or the court directs the creditor and says, creditor, you can go after the individual's LLC membership and corporate holding, but you can only go after their distributions. You cannot take the shares from them. You cannot step into the place of the member in the LLC. And the reason for that, again, the theory behind that is an LLC is an unincorporated association of individuals. So now let's say this table here and I are in an LLC. Now, as a member, we're all members of the LLC. If I have a judgment against me for $100,000 or $1 million, I can only pay $100,000. It is not fair to the 6 of you that some stranger comes in who already hates my guts, sits at your membership table and votes in the LLC businesses. Because you, as an unincorporated association of individuals, don't want this person to come in. You're not assured that you have the same vision as this person, or that this person is going to do the best that he or she can do to make the LLC work. So the court says you cannot take their membership, you cannot vote for them. As a shareholder, you cannot vote for a board of directors, but we can get what you're owed. So what usually happens is an LLC has distributions of their profits and distribution of their losses, but the profits is what the charging order goes against. So now all the creditor is going to have to do is wait, and they're going to wait till your LLC pays each member a distribution. And once the distribution is paid, they'll attach it. Now what happens if the LLC doesn't pay distributions? Well, then the creditor cannot collect. And the creditor is can stand there for as long as they want, and it becomes a game of chicken or a game of who can last the longest. But the problem is, once the charging order comes and they attach your distribution, the creditor is going to get taxed for it, even if they haven't collected it yet. Now, if I'm someone suing part of an LLC on a charging order, I don't want to have to pay taxes on money that I may never get. So that kind of makes you not a very attractive target for lawsuits, personal lawsuits. Now, the thing about Nevada that is awesome for LLCs and for closely held corporation is Nevada statute specifically protects LLC members and specifically protects the shareholders of closely held corporations. The Nevada statute specifically says that they cannot foreclose on your membership units or your shares. A court cannot order contrary to the statute. So say you got the judge on a bad day. The judge cannot say, you know what, now we're going to let you go after the membership. They cannot do that. It's against statutory law. Specifically, it's against statutory law. Beauty about Nevada statute is it protects single-member LLCs, meaning if you are the only member of your LLC, normally or in the past what they would do is they would sue you on the alternate identity theory, meaning there is only one person who's a member of this LLC, therefore the LLC is that person, I'm suing that person, I get his LLC. Nevada statute says nope, even a single-member LLC is protected. Now on the corporate side of protection, it was a balancing of interests here. Now, we want to protect the small business owner, we want to protect the small corporation, but we don't want to necessarily protect someone who's just a shareholder in GE or a shareholder in Microsoft. So the Nevada statute specifically says or reads that you get charging order protection if the corporation you are a shareholder of is limited to less than 100 shareholders. It's not publicly traded or a subsidiary of a publicly traded company, and it's not a professional corporation like a corporation of association of attorneys, accountants, architects, etc. And again, it limits the creditor's remedy to attaching the dividend shares from the corporation, from your shareholder dividends. And again, if the corporation doesn't pay out any dividends on its shares, there's nothing to attach. So in conclusion, and in summation, what I want you to get from this is that you have a lot of power with corporations and LLCs. But with great power comes great responsibility, and the responsibility is to run your corporation as a corporation, not as an alter ego or a same identity. Because if you do that, you lose all the benefits of a corporation and an LLC. Similar to an LLC, run it like an LLC. Have annual meetings, have annual shareholder meetings if you're a corporation, board of directors meetings. Keep your resolutions on the computer and on a hard copy. If you're an LLC with a single member, sit down with yourself over a cup of coffee and have your meeting then. But put it on the computer, print it out, put it in your books, put it on your shelf. Number one, don't commingle funds. If you need to borrow money from you personally, draft up a resolution, hold a board of directors meeting, and say, we're going to borrow money from Toland's personal funds at a reasonable corporate banking rate, and you will be protected. And once you're protected, now, one last thing that I forgot to bring up is, even as a board of director of a corporation, you are protected to a certain extent if you follow what they call the business judgment rule. And the business judgment rule is, as the board of directors sits, did they decide on a particular issue in a way that other reasonably situated board of directors would have voted? Now, I'm not sure how many of you have heard that story. I'm not sure if it's an urban legend about the founder of FedEx needed $20-something thousand to make his payroll. He didn't have it, went to Vegas, went on the blackjack table or the craps table, and made his $27,000. That probably would not be a good business judgment rule protection, because board of directors probably should not be gambling the corporate money to make payroll. So if you are deciding the direction and the destiny of your corporation in a way that similarly situated, reasonable board of directors would have decided, then you're going to be protected. Thank you very much. I wish all of you great success. If you have any questions, you can come up to me after or whenever. Truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, what I want to do is, I've got another excellent speaker for you. I'm very privileged that he took the time to be able to come here, because he's one of the premier attorneys in Nevada, and especially Las Vegas, across the country. He's going to talk to you about another side of the vehicle, or another side of the investment vehicles that are available to that are available to you on the other side of the spectrum, okay? So you've got positive things that go out there and make money. What about what's happening with all the businesses that are going down? What's happening with the fact that, you know, you look at a lot of these businesses. Remember Citibank back a few years? You remember when it went down and it went down to $1? You couldn't buy that stock, could you? But look where it's at now. Now, somebody went and invested in that company and helped them out, or all these companies that are restructuring and coming out. Who do you think is sitting there to stand to make this great rate of returns that come in there on these debt instruments and be able to sit through this and have it collateralized and be able to get a great rate of return, and when the company comes back on their feet, they get paid? Or if they aren't paid, the investors that tried to help the company are able to still get a great rate of return. Wouldn't that be great? So you're helping America, and if you can make it prosper and the business prosper, you make money. And if it doesn't, you make sure that you get paid and you're not the last one without a chair when the music stops. Wouldn't that be great? Okay, so what I'm going to do, I want you to give a great round of applause to attorney Joseph Scalia.
Too sexy for my love, love's going to leave.
Nice music there, Nick. I appreciate that. Now you're building up expectations. How you guys doing today? All right, good. I'm going to bore the pants off of you, I promise. No, I'm kidding. All right. I'll just tell you one thing. You know, when I'm bald, obviously, so is Nick. And 20 years ago, when I would go to a thing like this, I would say, go talk to the bald guy. So, oh, you must be Joe. Yeah, how you doing? Well, now there's like 30 bald guys around, and people are like walking up to me and asking me questions about forms and things. I don't know what they're talking about. So next time we go to a convention, don't say, look for the bald guy, because there's about 50 of us in the room now. All right, listen. I'm going to tell you guys pretty much about the greatest thing. Is this thing working? The greatest thing ever. And it's very, very arcane. Nick had asked me to explain. Is this mic on here, or is this mic on? Okay. An alternative investment. Is this okay? All right. And let me ask you a question before I get to my formal remarks. How many think that the United States economy and the Las Vegas economy is doing great and we're heading in the right direction? Raise your hand. All right. How many think that the economy is about to tank and it's one bad event or two bad events from really taking another leg down? All right. Did you guys hear that Wells Fargo just today announced they're laying off 2,300 people? Did you hear that? Right. So now, as investors, there are two things you can do. And you can do what everybody else does. You can get on your E-Trade account, and you can call your broker at Merrill Lynch, and you can do all of those things that the masses are trained to do. But if everybody's doing them, then it's a herd mentality. Everybody runs into gold, gold goes up. Everybody gets scared, gold goes down. It's like sheep running across the fields. But the super sophisticated investors, they don't do that. They're not running from hot thing to hot thing and from thing to thing. Very long-term, very pragmatic, you know, and they're looking at the long term. So we all believe that the economy is going bad. What do we do about it? Right? We're going to do, oh, we can do this, we can hedge, we can do that. But that's really sort of what the pablum is fed to the masses. Now, investors like to hear happy things. They don't like to hear bad things. But the sophisticated, wealthy investors buy bad things. Well, why do they buy bad things? Because as the sheep are going from thing to thing, the things that they are abandoning or losing favor are now underpriced, undervalued, until all of a sudden the masses say, oh, but maybe I should have bought Citibank stock at $1. I thought they were going to go broke. Well, they didn't. All right, so there is a unique sort of financial tool out there. It is not for the unsophisticated. And I'm going to say a word to you that most investors will cringe at. But let me ask you a question. Do you think that the number of small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, which will file bankruptcy in the next 3 years will go up or go down? Up. All right. So Forever 21 announced yesterday that they're laying off or reducing their staff to just 29-hour employees. There was an article yesterday about a University of Virginia is laying off people. And what that does to the small and medium-sized businesses, the bigger businesses, they can withstand it. They have investments in other countries, other markets, other things. But your local small businesses, you know, if you own a muffler shop and you're not selling mufflers, you don't have a division in India. Right? You're going down unless you find something to do. And I'm going to tell you something. I've been practicing law in Las Vegas for 20 years. I'm also licensed in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Mississippi. But primarily, I have an economics degree. And I'm going to tell you something. In 2007 and 2008, I was telling people that this thing was coming. Joe, you're the prophet of doom. You're the prophet of doom. Why are you telling us all this? My house isn't going to lose its value. Are you out of your mind? Are you crazy? Vegas is going to be fabulous forever. So I changed the name from my mentality from a prophet of doom with a P-H-E-T to a prophet of doom, P-R-O-F-I-T, because as the economy gets worse and worse and worse, there are people making a lot of money. And the trick is to find out how to do that. I'm going to explain to you how exactly this is getting done. Since 2009, my office alone has discharged, you ready for this? $130 million of consumer debt. Pause. That's an amazing number. Had a client who was a real estate developer. He was developing properties. When he came to see me for what's called, I'll explain the various, a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, he was sleeping on his friend's sofa. He had $10 million in debt, not one asset to his name. And the reason he finally came to get me was because the pay here, buy here, pay here car people were chasing him down for his Cadillac. They were trying to repossess his Cadillac SUV. Now, who knows anything about bankruptcy? All right. 1, 2, 3. All right. Number one, you may not know this. Bankruptcy is in the United States Constitution. It was designed, who wrote the Constitution? Businessmen, lawyers, right? You have a ship of tobacco or rum going from Cuba to Charleston, South Carolina, and it gets wiped out by a storm. You lost everything. You're done. A riot, a mob, burns down a warehouse. You know, people complain about things being out of control now. They were a lot more out of control a couple hundred years ago, right? Some mob would erupt and burn a storehouse down out of nowhere. So bankruptcy was put in the Constitution for economic cycles. We think that, oh, things are really terrible now. They're not. I mean, they're bad, but this is sort of the cycle. It goes up, it goes down. And these laws and these things in the Constitution were put there for times like this. So it's in there. Thomas Jefferson filed bankruptcy. And who knows how the Library of Congress got started? The Library of Congress got started when everybody felt sorry for Thomas Jefferson because he's now tapped out. His farm, he's a terrible farmer. He's broke. They gave him $25,000. They took all of his books that he had. Don't forget, Thomas Jefferson spoke Latin and French and Greek. He had books on architecture and gardening. They took his books and brought them to Washington, D.C. And guess what we have today? The Library of Congress. Henry Ford went broke. Abraham Lincoln went broke 3 times, right? And Walt Disney. So there's a lot. Donald Trump files. So when I say bankruptcy to people, they get all nervous, especially investors, like, we're going to lose our money. All right. Chapter 7, generally a consumer or a small business, they're tapped, they're done, player one, game over, bad. It's the reset button. Player one, game over, I'm tired of this, I'm tired of Vegas, I'm tired of the whole thing. I'm done, I'm leaving town. Keep your pension, keep all that sort of stuff. Chapter 13 is what's called an individual or a wage earner's bankruptcy. In that particular case, somebody might have fallen 4 or 5 payments behind on their house. They want to keep their property. And the creditor in those cases get 100 cents on the dollar, generally on real property. Unsecured creditors get nothing. And I'm going to explain 2 things to you. In the world that we all live in, there are basically just 2 kinds of debt: unsecured and secured. And depending on what your investments are or what you're doing, you could be on either one of those things. If you're writing people payday loans, those are generally unsecured. If you have a title to a vehicle, that's secured, and it's very simple. If there is a piece of property or a piece of collateral that you can take to collect on your loan, you can do it. Unsecured medical bills. You may owe UMC $100,000, but they can't come and take your house. They can't come. They can sue you. They can maybe get some money out of your paycheck, but that's not it. Now, the one that you may hear of, you hear of a lot more and more and more, is the Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Who knows what the Chapter 11 bankruptcy is? Some businesses, and here's a shocker. You ready for this? Individuals can file Chapter 11 bankruptcies. An individual. So I have clients who are real estate investors, and in the boom, they had 30 houses and strip malls and all this stuff that at one time was worth a lot of money. Now it's worth 40, 50 cents on the dollar. And people say, oh, the bank's not working with me, and I sent in all the paperwork 5, 7 times, and forget it all. Forget about all that. That's a waste of your time. You file the Chapter 11, you get an appraisal, you strip the value down to the current value, and boom, it's done. Just like last week, I had a woman bought a condo for she owed $430,000 as a rental property. I just crammed it down to $110. Her monthly payment dropped to $700 a month. Is she happy? Yes. Is she cash flowing now? Yes. Was she before? No. She was crying every day and she couldn't sleep and all that stuff. All right, so now let's talk about Chapter 11s. Who knows anything about how debt is prioritized or structured? Does anybody have any experience in debt or debt management or debt collections? Okay. People think that when you file a bankruptcy, it's you against your creditors. It's not. The creditors, they know what's going on. It's the creditors fighting amongst themselves who say, oh no, I get paid, not that company. My lien was perfected first. I got paid, not Company B. Company B says, no, no, no. We had a mortgage in place first. We had a deed in place first. So that's where the real fight comes in. So the question is, and what I'm getting to is, how do you make money in an environment where the business headwinds are such that more and more small and medium companies are going to file Chapter 11? I'm going to tell you. People don't know this. And if you have a phone, you can just go to Google and Google announces DIP financing. DIP financing stands for what's called debtor in possession financing. And debtor in possession financing is like a magical type of debt. Every bank wants to write DIP loans. If you hit the Google button, it'll be, oh, JP Morgan Chase extended a $500 million loan to a bankrupt company. Oh, Citibank lent $100 million to a bankrupt company. Like when Hostess went down, all those companies were standing in line to give Hostess money. You're thinking, what kind of crazy world do we live in? Like, what man in his right mind would lend a bank? And that's what you don't understand. Because little investors or business people, they hear that bankruptcy and they go, eh. The wealthy, the Warren Buffetts of the world, run these companies because they know something that you don't. And what they know that you don't is that when you give a company they've already filed bankruptcy. They can't do anything else to you. They're broke. But when you come into the bank, you come into the courthouse, and you put on your armor, and you put on your white hat, and you come in there on your white horse, and you jump off, you say, I'm here to save the company. And everybody opens up, woo, look, debtor possession financing. And, oh, we're going to have our operating costs. Oh, we're going to meet payroll. Oh, we're going to do all these great things. That's good for the economy. You were saving a company with maybe, like for example, when JP Chase extends a $500 million loan, they're saving payroll. They're saving 1,000 jobs. That's what the bankruptcy laws and by the way, I have an economics degree too. That's what creates that incentive to get that investment. But as the investor, what do you get? What incentive is there for you to say, I'm going to give Mr. Smith's muffler shop $500,000. I'm going to give Johnny's tattoo place $100,000. Why would somebody do that? And the reason that they do it, and the reason the law encourages it, is you get what's called super priority. When all those debtors are fighting over who has the mortgage, well, they made a stupid mistake. And they lent money to the company before the company filed bankruptcy. You come in after bankruptcy, guess who jumps to the front of the line? Hey, I saved the company. I put in $500,000. I saved $1,000. I saved 1,000 jobs. I saved all this stuff. So you're saving the company. You're the white knight. If the company succeeds, you get humongous rates of return, between 8, 20, 22%. Why? What are their choices? They'll pay you. They'll pay the dip. That's why all these big banks have divisions which do nothing but dip financing. They will fight tooth and nail to get that because you get paid first, and you get paid extravagant rates of interest, plus fees, plus attorney's fees, plus costs, and it works out great because it's expensive money, but it keeps the company working. The company can restructure. The company sells off some of its assets. You get paid. Then 6, 8 months down the road, the company is healthy, and then that's what they do. Now that they're healthy, they say, hey, you know what? We want to retire this dip financing. Let's go get normal financing now, and you're out. And you've got your investment, and you got all your money recouped, and you've got all this interest and all these great goodies, a big bag of money. But let's take the other situation. The company doesn't make it. It's a wagon wheel company. There's somebody selling rotary phones, right? Like, we've got a plan. We got a brand new wagon wheel. We're going to make it out of plastic. It's going to be 20% lighter. Right? But guess what they own? They own a factory. They own a plant. They own a copyright, trademark, patents. There's a lot of assets that you get paid, or the dip financing company gets paid first. It's called a super priority lien. And the example for a homeowner would be, and this is just an example, no application in reality, but as an example as a homeowner, be like if you had a mortgage and you were 7 months behind, and Johnny comes in and says, hey, I'm going to offer them dip financing. I'm going to lend them $5,000 to pay their utilities, pay their property bills, blah, 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 blah. Johnny, with the $5,000 loan, beats the purchase money mortgage. You understand what that means? You're defeating every other lien, every other security, every other pledge of collateral, everything. Dip financing comes right to the top. So now, that's great. People are doing this. JP Chase is doing it. Has anybody Googled announces dip financing? Did anybody do it on the phone real quick? Did anybody talk? People, they're addicted. Who told you that? I didn't tell you that. All right, we'll do it in the parking lot. I don't want to violate the rules, okay? So, but there's a problem with this market. When you want to borrow $500 million, you want to borrow a billion or several hundred million, every big bank is in line fighting for that business. But what happens if you're like a, like a steel company or a chain of fast food restaurants, and you need dip financing? The market for the little guy is pretty slim. Nobody wants to write a muffler shop, notwithstanding the fact that he's got $500,000 in accounts receivable, notwithstanding the fact that he owns his own building in the middle of a great intersection in a busy town. They don't want to do it. They don't want to write $500,000, $300,000, $1 million loans to the little guy because it's not worth it to them. They don't make enough money. It's called a discriminatory market. If the market discriminates against lower-end dip financing. So as a result, there's a huge market of small and medium-sized businesses that could function, but they need the temporary dip financing. That is, you talk about an alternative. What was my topic here today? Alternative investment. That is literally the alternative investment. And it's sort of safe. I'm going to go through some of these slides here. Let's see what we have up here. OK, this is a company that sort of does this. This is called Exeter Styles Capital Fund. And I'm going to go through some of these things. Is it on? All right. I'm not going to make the same mistake the other guy made. All right. OK. If you read this first line here, I'm just going to read it. I'm not going to read it to you, but it says, investors' capital through creation of prime lien positions within the authority of 11 U.S.C. 364. What is 11 U.S.C. 364? The Chapter 11 Bankruptcy Code. Okay, there's provisions in the law that say it's commonly referred to as debtor in possession financing. Delivers superior returns while simultaneously benefiting from highly secured status found within the framework of a bankruptcy code. Highly secured. It is a super secured debt under the provisions of the bankruptcy code. You talk about arcane. I told you this was arcane. I also told you I would bore you. Am I boring you yet? All right. Now, the key to these types of investments, to this type of investment is, see, this is, part of the reason, and I'm going to skip through some of these things, is this. And you don't have to be an economist to figure this out. The United States economy, the U.S. economy is pretty frail. I think Bernanke is buying, $80 billion a month in Treasury notes. Today, the stock market crashed, and then it rose. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason anymore to what's going on. And there are certain other possible drags on the economy. If gasoline prices go up to $5 or $6 a gallon, there's instability in the Middle East. As usual, something's going on in Egypt. Oil prices go up, drag on the economy. Somebody does some sort of terrorist act or flies a plane into a building, drag on the economy. The Affordable Care Act goes in place. Unemployment's starting to spike. Unemployment went up, almost a half a point. According to Gallup, okay, drag on the economy. You heard the speaker before me going through the myriad of rules and regulations that he has to go through just to tell people about a charity and a land deal. I mean, all that regulation, drag on the economy. I mean, so what are the possible positives for the economy? Do we see any? I mean, the Fed's got, $2 trillion worth of government debt. So look, all these balls are up in the air. And as an investor, I think we're somewhat, the talking head shows, you got to buy gold. No, sell gold. Go to your E-Trade account. No, go securities. No, look, the bond market. All that stuff is great if you really know what you're doing. And most small and mid investors don't. I mean, you'd have to be doing that all day long. And then, of course, you have these companies, the stockbroking firms, they claim, we got a great stock for you, we got a great stock. They don't care about the stock. They care about their commission. They're not worried about the performance of this thing that they're selling you. So there's a lot of potential drags. And the, see, I'm going to skip through these things. Geopolitical risks, unpredictability. There is a lot of money to be made by taking advantage of unstable and uncertain economic conditions. And here's something good, even this type of dip financing, you're saving a lot of small companies, but let's assume the economy has a miraculous rebound. Even in the best economies, there are companies going broke. They overexpand. They miss markets. They didn't see a market change. I mean, who remembers, I don't even remember the name anymore. Was it the crackberry, right? That was the biggest thing. They're gone, or will be gone soon. RIM. I mean, they're hanging on barely. I mean, they might be in a Chapter 11. Now, here's a classic example. RIM goes broke. Who's going to run in there? Dip financing. Why? The phones nobody cares about. How about their patents? How about their patents? Microsoft and Apple and Google and all these companies will be in there fighting for those patents. So you lend them $100 million dip financing. The patents go to auction. Now you got, that's crazy rate. You got $120 million back. You got 20% plus all your fees. It's an unbelievable rate of return for minimal risk. This talks about prioritized liens. You get paid first by dealing with under the rules of the bankruptcy court. Is that it? Am I done with this thing here? All right, so that is dip financing. There's a lot of money to be made in it if you understand it. And I'll be happy to field any questions. I'm kind of short, I think, huh? At the end? I missed the memo. Dear Joe. What? I don't see any memo. Let's take a look at. Oh, about the investor requirements, that one? Oh, I didn't. Oh, that memo. That memo, of course. What was I thinking? All right. I will not be taking any questions. So you will live in a world of mystery and confusion until you can see me. All right? All right. Now, I will touch on one more topic about the type of investments that you need to do in this. I think I just mentioned they changed the crowdfunding rules about letting small investors in there. But this isn't for, the $5,000, $10,000 investor. There's somebody who's got, a couple hundred G's, sitting around. And that's why I say, well, alternative investments for the super wealthy. If you're sitting on $10 million, you stick a million or two into a dip fund. Okay, say you get 15% rate of return on that, or 20% rate of return. Is it setting the world on fire? No, but is it a nice, solid investment? Yes. If the whole economy goes to hell in a handbasket, are you making money? Yes, you'll put 4 more million into it. Right? So that's why this is, like I told you, the most brilliant thing you've ever heard of, but it's also very contrarian. It's very contrarian because every investor wants to hear, oh, things are great, the sky is blue, everything's wonderful. Yeah, but not always. And this is one of those things, in good economies, companies go broke. In bad economies, more companies go broke. But in either case, there's money to be made from companies going broke. And by the way, you know who else gets paid with the dip financing? Number one, lawyers. We're number one. And why is that? Why are lawyers number one? Do you ever see a lawyer work who's not getting paid? Do you ever see that happen? Right? So, I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, but you put, it's called the super priority. It's in the administrative category, meaning these things must be paid under the law in order to keep the system sort of rolling and getting these bankruptcy cases to an end. Either win, lose, or draw. Win, company restructures, everybody's happy, a thinner, meaner, tighter company. They're not a big fans with these companies languishing in Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Some of them can go for a long time, but if you remember the hostess situation, they filed one Monday. I think within a week, the lawyers filed the motion and said, you know what? There's no set of circumstances that we can conceive of to make this company profitable. Dip financing came in. Who do you think sold the trademark to the Ding Dong or the Twinkie or whatever processed junk food people eat these days? Right, there's people out there craving Ding Dongs. They're crying, they're weeping. They haven't bought the Ding Dong in 20 years, and now all of a sudden, oh, this is going to need to get a Ding Dong. I didn't create the world, people. I just live here. This is the kind of stuff I have to deal with all day long. All right. All right. Thank you guys very much. If you have any questions, I'll be back there. Just go look for the bald guy.
So what he's talking about here is he's talking about the ability to get into the debt instruments of these businesses, not the super huge businesses that are like $45 billion or more, but let's just say somebody's got a business that has a couple $1 million worth of receivables coming in. They've got $5–10 million worth of trucks, buildings, things like that. And let's just say they need a few $100,000 to be able to, they're going to file bankruptcy and they need that to get out with their creditors so that they can get back on their feet. Securing that with all that debt, with all those trucks and all those buildings and the receivables, that's a pretty secure investment, wouldn't you agree? That's what we're talking about. How about that for 30 seconds? I got to say that. Could have saved you a whole bunch of time. No, I'm just kidding. We talked about businesses, right? We talked about running your business like a business. We talked about different types of entities, keeping corporate compliance and things like that. So you've got a business. Now what do you need? You need a brand, right? You need to be able to market. When we have that pot out there and we said put your business card in, you need to have a business card to put in. You work inside of somebody else's entity, but you have your own business and you need to run it and work it as such. And I've got, you guys like your setup and your spread and your all the stuff from the event today? Wasn't that great? All that stuff and all that work goes into branding who it is that we are and how we want to be known out to the community and across the world. And who we use and who's a part of our team is who I would suggest that you using, but I'm going to have her bring up herself, and I'm going to have her come and talk about different things to do. What is branding? How does it work? And how is it that you can make this thing pop and drive traffic and get business and everything just by recognition alone? So I'm going to bring her up, Ms. Jessica Kennedy. Give her a round of applause.
All right, there we go. So my presentation, I kind of have a fun sense of humor, I think. I hope you guys do too, because if not, this is going to be really awful and merciless for you then. But my presentation, I call it branding. Nah, I don't need that. Do I? And actually, yeah, you actually do. You really do, and I'm going to show you why. So when you have a runny nose, everybody answer, okay? What do you reach for? Right? You reach for a Kleenex. Actually, no, you reach for a facial tissue. Because why? Kleenex doesn't sell or make Kleenexes. They make facial tissues, right? Well, and in the morning, a lot of people have some of this, and they don't use that particular vernacular. Nope. They go out and get a Starbucks, except that Starbucks doesn't sell Starbucks. They sell coffee. Now, they do sell franchises, but they don't sell Starbucks. So what does it have to do with you? Do I happen to think you need to blow your nose and wake up with some coffee? Maybe. No, just kidding. Just kidding. So, what it actually has to do with you is the fact that they are so brand segmented and so into what they do, they are a household name. Now, if you were a household name, A, that would be really rad, and B, that would only be rad for you, right? There's no part of that you're like, no, I don't want to be a household name. I don't want to be like the guy who invented Post-it notes or anything like that. We all know that's a 3M company, right? Thanks to Romy and Michelle, right? So now we're looking at this slide next. And what do all these companies have in common? In case you don't know, that's Adobe, it's British Petroleum, it's Chevron, Dairy Queen, eBay, Facebook. If you guys don't know Facebook, seriously, no, you guys all do. I know you do. IKEA, LG, McDonald's, Nike, Pepsi, Quiznos, Shell, Twitter, Walmart, and Xerox. What do they all have in common? Anybody? Branding, that's right. And why do you think they branded their companies? Exactly, so they're easily recognizable, because if you don't know who you're dealing with, you don't know who you're dealing with. So I know you guys all deal with different people and you deal with all sorts of stuff, but we want to talk to you about why it's important for people to know who you are. So they have a recognizable logo, and I've got some scenarios here. Do you have a logo? Yeah, I do. My cousin's best friend's hairdresser's son was thinking about being a designer, and he made me this in paint. Isn't that awesome? Right? So it's Mike's Professional Computing Repair, and he's used a lobster. Isn't that clever? Yes, and in a pinch, call Mike. Okay, well, wow, that's awesome, and I'm really happy for your cousin's best friend's hairdresser's son who was thinking about becoming a designer, and he learned how to use paint, which is really fantastic for your kids to use, or for you if you're really bored. Maybe it's not the professional look that you might like to convey for your business. So the second scenario is, no, do you think I need one? And I'll answer that in a minute. So back to scenario one. Well, that's an interesting logo, isn't it? I actually did find that on the internet. That actually does exist. So, and I was like, you know, I just Googled really bad logo Microsoft Paint, and that came up. No kidding. That was, is that not awesome? I thought that was really cool. Like, in a pinch, call Mike. Wow. Wow, somebody uses this logo. Think about it. Don't think about it too long. All right, so what do you want to ponder when you're choosing your logo? Because ultimately, you're going to have a vision in your head of what you kind of like for your logo to look like, because it's important for you to think about a logo. Well, I want you to think about something else. Why are you in business? Now, the obvious statement is because you want to make money, but you could do that with any job, right? So, but your big why. Why are you in the business that you're in? What is it that's particularly edifying for you? Why are you doing what you're doing? Your logo should reflect that in some way. So, and if your logo does reflect your big why, and if it doesn't, then let's keep going on. Your logo is like your face. So everybody in here, I don't see any two people, I don't see any identical twins, and even they look different. Nope, no twins in here, or if you are, your other twin's not here. Everybody has a different face. Well, if you and you and you and you all pick a different logo, you're all going to be differentiated from one another, even though you're maybe under the same parent company umbrella, right? Because you all have your own unique individual businesses. Well, everybody's face is different, and every business needs a different face too, just like you have a different face. So the next question would be, does your job do a good representation of you? Sorry. So, well, Mike's Professional Computer Repair, unless Mike is a lobster, I'm going to say probably not. So if it does, then that's really great. If it really represents you, if you've got a strong logo, if it stood the test of time, if it stood the test of everything that it needs to withstand, that's fantastic. But if not, then what do? Well, that's when we go to scenario number 2. Why? Well, because I don't actually think that you need a logo. Statistics prove that you do. It's vital for your company. Now, something that's kind of interesting is that about 89.3% when I made this slide of statistics are made up on the spot, but that number's actually risen to 92.4 since we've been in this room. I'm making that up, you guys. All statistics are made up. It's just how you want to skew the data, okay? So why do you need a logo? Well, you want to look like a professional company, right? Not some fly-by-night. So if somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, you know, I want to do business with you, and eventually you're going to need to invoice them, probably. If not, then you run a very unique business where you're not doing any invoicing. But if you want to look like a fly-by-night company, because you want to look legit. No matter what, you want to look legit. So you also want some customer recognition there, so that if your friend Mary refers you to her friend Susie, Susie knows who she's dealing with, what company, and what company she's consistently dealing with, and she's not like, oh, you know, it's that friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, and I don't really remember their name. No, that's what you want. You want them to remember your name. You want them to remember your company name. That's vital. So, and because it is your face in the business world, you need a logo. You can help clarify exactly what it is that you do with your logo. Now, British Petroleum, they have a sun in theirs because I'm assuming that they feel that they're the best thing under the sun. But beyond them, you look at the McDonald's logo, it's golden arches. It's meant to symbolize 2 French fries bent down. True story from the McDonald brothers. That was their whole dream with that. And a logo, it will set you apart from your competition. No 2 logos should be the same. If they are, then we need to probably go see Joe Scalia. If your logo looks like somebody else's, you've got a problem. So you want your own unique face, and it will set you apart from your competition regardless. So, and you're like, hey, hold on, lady. You were going to talk about branding, right? Well, you know what? I am talking about branding because a logo is a part of that process. So if you don't take that first step, which is a vital step, you're going to miss out on that part of your success chain. And success is like a chain. You build it 1 link at a time, right? So unless you're successful enough, and if you guys are successful enough, you don't need any more success, then like, why are you here? And well, no, you do need branding. So what is branding? We talk about branding a lot, and you hear the term thrown around all the time. You hear it in the media, you read it on the internet, you see it in the newspapers or trade publications, you see it everywhere you turn. You see Facebook talk about it, you see people on Facebook talk about it, Twitter, you see tweets about it. If you're in Las Vegas, we are the most tweeted about city in the nation and in the world, and one of the most hot topics on Twitter is branding. So let's think about that. What is it? Well, I put together this definition based on several different classical definitions of what branding is. And it's what sticks in your mind. Now, it's what's associated with a product or a service or an organization. And it's what's sticking in your mind. Whether or not at that moment you bought anything, whether you contributed to that organization, no matter what you did regarding that, it's what's sticking in your mind. So, now, it's also like if a particular color, picture, or logo springs to mind when you think about a company, that's branding too, because let's think about Dairy Queen for a minute. Dairy Queen. Do you have any remembrances of going there when you were a little kid, maybe with your family, or maybe you took a first date there, or maybe you just went there on a drive-through sometime, you're like, hey, Dairy Queen, that looks kind of good, you know, I'd like an ice cream cone. Okay, well, and if it felt good eating it the first time, then you probably have some pretty fond memories of that. If it was a hot day and you're like, oh, it was nice and cold and it made me feel happy, then when you see the DQ logo, it makes you feel happy. Now, you can extrapolate that experience into any other logo, any other company, any other thing, and it's still going to be the same because it's going to be the same fond remembrance there. So it's that remembrance and that psychology that they're using. So, and sometimes branding isn't just about the logo. Sometimes it's your packaging too. Now, I realize that not everybody in here has a product per se that comes in a package, but I will tell you what, if somebody brings me that lovely little turquoise box, I know where it came from. I know exactly where it came from. I may not know what the Tiffany & Company logo looks like off the top of my head. I may not be able to draw it for you, but I know exactly where that little turquoise box came from. So, what's branding? Well, it's something that triggers associations in our mind. So it doesn't matter what that association is. It's some form of an association. It's creating an identity that is absolutely, uniquely your own. It's the perception that you want people to have about your company. Does anybody in here want people to think, oh, my company's mediocre? Anybody? Does everybody in here want to think, oh, my company's great? Yeah, right? My company's awesome. Right, so you need something that's going to reflect, my company's awesome. We're the best at, and then you fill in the blanks there with your own personal statement, right? So if my logo is uniquely tied to my brand, what makes a good logo? Well, first it should be easy to read. You got to think about where it's going to be used. It could be a business card, it could be social media, it could be a billboard, it could be a trade publication, it could be a t-shirt, a hat, it could be wrapping the Luxor with it. You never know because people do that all the time. So it should be well coordinated with an image and text. And why do I say an image and text? Well, until you are so deeply entrenched in people's minds that you're a household name, you probably need some form of text out there so people know who you are. So they associate your iconic logo with your name over and over and over and over and over again. They say to make people remember things, you repeat things 3 times. They say to make people remember things. Okay, you guys get the idea, right? But you need to have that repetition, and the only way to get the recognition through repetition is to have an iconic logo with a name associated with it. So if you're Mike's Professional Computer Repair and you've got a lobster, well, we're going to remember you, Mike, but we may not use you, but we're going to remember you. So your branding did actually technically effectively work. Good job, Mike. But yeah, I use McDonald's as an example, Golden Arches. It stands alone. Yeah, you guys know about that, right? So your logo needs to be able to be adapted across all media. Now, when I say all media, I mean everything. I mean, from your website to your business card to a hat to a shirt to literally wrapping the Luxor. Chris Angel wrapped the Luxor, not personally, but Chris Angel wrapped the Luxor. We wrap buildings here probably more than any other city in the world. And I'll tell you, if your logo isn't awesome, you're not going to wrap a building with it. Well, wouldn't you like to see your logo on a building somewhere? How awesome is that? Because you know you can see that from outer space. I'm not even making that up. So the question, though, to ask is your logo going to work everywhere that it is? Is it going to work from outer space? So in keeping with fonts, if you guys know what fonts is, that's the text that you use and how they appear, because you notice that many of the fonts used today were different. We tried to mix things up a little bit so nobody got bored reading if you were reading along. So there's a rule. It's the KISS rule, and keep it simple, silly. I like silly instead of the other one. All of the company logos that I showed you earlier have this in common too. So let's see if some of these reinforce what I'm telling you. Well, Adobe's is very clean. They have an image. They have text. Chevron, very clean, 2-color image, text, right? Facebook, they've got that down to just one letter and a box, right? Now, how awesome is that you're so popular, you can use one letter of the alphabet and a box, okay? Think about that. IKEA, if you guys don't know IKEA, please find IKEA. And Walmart, you know Walmart. So, how many colors should you use? Well, I'm going to tell you that it kind of depends on the nature of your business, but in generally speaking, and if you look at our banner back here, we've branded our conference Hush Hush with black and white and red, right? And Well Structures is gold and black. So we've got two that are represented there. Now that's kind of my golden rule of thumb. That's also what I teach my students at UNLV, is that if you're going to do something like that, you should probably think about 2 colors and then maybe add to that at some point in time if you want to add a tagline or whatever. A tagline is like, we're the best. You know what I mean? Like Mike's Computer Repair Service, we're the best. Okay, so that would be your tagline. You could have that in any color you want, but you should have 2 dominating colors. So let's look. Well, BP, I've got our Hush, I've got Quiznos, and look, there's Well Structures again. So BP really has 2, but they've got shades of green. So, okay, fine. Quiznos really has 2, but look, their tagline, toasty, is in kind of a mushroom color. So yeah, they're using 2 colors. That's what you should probably think about. Now, if your favorite colors are pink and purple and you like ponies, then you may want to really ponder using a pink and purple pony for your logo. But you know what? We could probably make that work if you're really into it. So, right? Thank you. Exactly. You're like, a pink and purple pony. Is she serious? Yeah, I'm kind of serious. If you really like pink and purple ponies, folks, and you really think that it will best represent your business, we will find a way to make that work for you, okay? I promise you, I can do that. So, I'm going to ask you guys, do shapes matter in your logo choice? Have you seen with all the logos I've showed you today some different shape choices? Of course you have. But it really depends on you. But I'm going to tell you what a lot of clever companies are doing now that's really, really smart. I'm going to use LG as my example. What LG is doing is they're putting their logo out in different ways. We've got 4 different ways shown here. So we've got their brand straight across. We've got their brand stacked. We have it with a little swoop for the life's good. And they've got their iconic face logo that's really just LG and a dot and a circle. Now think about that, LG and a dot and a circle, but it looks like something else, right? It's so simple, it's ridiculous, and it works so well. Now, I'm not endorsing any product necessarily. I'm just saying their logo is one of the best that's out there because it's 2 things. They're trying to connect with people, and that's what they're doing. They're connecting with people by having a person as their logo. Brilliant, right? So how often should I change my logo? Oh, I love this. I want to compare Pepsi and Coke, and we're not doing the taste test today, but we're going to compare their logos. In 1885, Coca-Cola established their logo. In 2000, wait, no, actually they've never changed it. That's right. So from 1885 until today, 2013, and next year and every year after this, they have the same logo. But in, what is that, 1898, I believe, is when Pepsi-Cola came out. And look who they tried to be from the very beginning. They tried to be just like Coca-Cola. Now, they actually started out as an elixir that you bought kind of like snake oil off of a traveling medicine show cart. I'm not even kidding about that. That's how Pepsi-Cola started. So starting as an elixir and moving up into a soft drink or a beverage of some sort, they've changed their logo a myriad of times. So how often should you change yours? Well, they've also changed their corporate structure many times. Maybe not structure in the well-structured kind of structure, but the way they do business and the way they market their business, they've changed that. So your logo should reflect how you do business as well. So what do you need to do to set yourself apart from your competition? Do you need to do that at all, or are you happy with the status quo? Do you need to update your face to the business world? Do you need to do this? Does anybody in here need to update their face to the business world, or are you all super happy? You're all super happy. That's awesome. Now, a few of you need to update your face to the business world. All right, well, do you want to learn more about how effective a branding strategy can positively impact your bottom line? Because it can. It will absolutely, if you brand your company appropriately, if you send the right message through a logo and through proper branding, through marketing and everything else with your products that you have, and your product can be you or your service, that's still a product, that will absolutely impact your bottom line, regardless of anything else. So I want to thank you guys for listening to me, and this is really all I had for you, and I'll be available afterwards for questions, and I'm going to turn everything over right now.
How many of you have often heard about things that the wealthy people can invest into, or the types of things that they can invest in, and they always seem like such a pipe dream, like they were untouchable? Doesn't that happen all the time? And you see these things, you guys, gosh, you know what? Once you're wealthy, then it's just like you just fall out of bed and you make money. And there's a lot of, there's not a whole lot of truth to that. But the one thing that I can tell you is that the more money you make and you attach to better financial planners and strategists and things of that nature, the more opportunities that you have that come your way. Because a lot of people that are entrepreneurs and people that are out there to get returns on investments are out there trying to attach to you, and you don't have to go look for them. The problem is with a lot of these investment vehicles and these big hedge funds and these big investment type products out there are that the people that are running them, they don't want to have the average person be able to attach and participate in them. Do you know why? Because most of the time, the people that are participating in them aren't really savvy investors. They take up a lot of time. They ask a lot of questions. They're very worried. They're very skeptical in a business where people aren't there to be trying out. And they just say, I don't want to deal with it, so they deal with the ultra wealthy. Well, I said, like I always do, that is an unfair playing field. What if we can bring down these programs, these investments that have otherwise been available or exclusive to the ultra wealthy, and allow the average Joe to attach to them, and I call them the 100,000-aire. Okay, I don't know, it's not a word, but the 100,000-aire, and to let them put away money and invest in some of these types of structures and vehicles and be able to create wealth and become a millionaire. Wouldn't that be great? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about one of those investment strategies. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a gentleman here. I want you to give him a big round of applause because he's come here. He's been 30-something years in the business. Okay, I should say 40, but I don't know. A ton of time. And he's going to come in here and he's going to run down these investment structures to you. Well, put your hands together for Mr. Robert Jones.
How's everybody doing? Everybody awake? Pillows and blankets are coming in soon, so for those who want to take a nap. We're going to talk about three different things, kind of. They're interrelated. The first one, I have to be extremely vague with you because it's what's called a security. And the security is, well, let me see how this works. We're not getting this to work. I told you I'm electronically challenged. I actually have a T-Mobile Razr phone back there that I use. It's a dumb phone, not a smartphone. I can make calls out, they call in, and I can, somebody, if I don't answer, they can leave a message. That's it. That's all my phone does. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you about a few different things. My goal today is to share with you alternatives to typical investments, and this is an educational training only. And the reason is because it's a security. And this is not a securities offering. No securities or investments will be offered for sale. No offers to purchase securities or make an investment will be accepted. No FDIC insured products will be offered for sale. Securities may only be sold under exemption or by registration. That's called a disclaimer that you have to say in the beginning. And there's what's called a three-touch 30-day rule with securities, which is you have to touch somebody 3 times, which can be a meeting like this, a phone conversation, an email, a letter, whatever. And in that 30-day period, the first time, we don't have a previous relationship. Tomorrow, we can talk about anything you want because we have a previous relationship. I don't make these rules, folks. I don't make these rules. But that's the rule. And you can't take anybody's money for 30 days. That's another rule. So that's how that works. Now, before we go any further, let me share a little bit about myself and my background. I've been a real estate broker in 3 states over 30 years, 33 years actually. I've been a securities broker, Series 7, commodities broker, Series 3, insurance broker. I've done pretty much everything there is to do in all the financial world. But my real love is real estate, and so that's what I primarily focus on. Real estate is very simple in one respect. There's 2 things to it. There's the property and there's the money to buy it, okay? That's it. There's 100 subdivisions of those, but that's the basic of it. And when you buy real estate, you either buy it and flip it or you buy it and hold it long term. I mean, that's it. There's a lot of subdivisions of that. But anyway, that's a little bit about my background and what we do. This will get better as we go along. Today's agenda, what is a syndication and the types of real estate syndications, what is a joint venture, type of joint ventures, and my charity and how it works. That's the whole agenda for today. Now, syndication by definition from the American Heritage Dictionary, it's an association of people or firms formed to promote a common interest or carry out a business enterprise. Let me clarify that for you. One operator and one investor, that's not a security. One operator, 2 investors or more is a security. And whether you and your brother, and if you had 2 brothers, want to invest in real estate, even though you're all family, that's a security. The SEC says so. So you, whether you know it or not, you fall into those categories, and you have to obey the laws, and they're very, very strict. And if you don't obey them, you pay a lot of fines and possibly jail time, so you have to obey them. Now, what's in it for you with syndications? Well, potential higher rate of return, equity type of investment, no effort on your part, it's passive income, and potential tax benefits. That's what can be done with a syndication. Now, here's a type of syndications you can do. You can do a flip syndication. And what's required for that, there's extensive research to locate deeply discounted properties. Negotiation to purchase the property, escrow and title the property, resell the properties, return monies to the syndication, and repeat the process. Now, when I say a lot of research, I don't know if you guys understand how much research is done. The basic rule of thumb is you're going to look at 100 properties to make an offer on 10 to buy 1. But that's a lot of research in there to get that done, to get the right type of property. Now, the next is a hold syndication, which is, again, very similar. Extensive research, and you want to get deeply discounted properties. Anybody can buy for retail. You can walk in to Century 21 or Remax or anything. What do you have on the MLS? Make an offer, maybe a little bit less, and buy, and that's it. But that's not getting a deal on real estate. Most of you people have probably heard the old adage that 90% of everybody became a millionaire, made it in real estate. How many have heard that? Every other profession in the world is in the other 10%. So being as I'm from Vegas, and the odds here, the best thing to do if you're going to make a lot of money is play the real estate game. Who would agree? Yeah, there you go. Now, another one, you can buy discount notes, and you can do the same thing. Discount notes is the bank, they make a note, or a private individual makes a note, and then you can buy it for a discount, and you can get a nice return on it. You don't necessarily have to buy the real estate. So as you look at that, gee, I can pay in the hard asset game, or I can play in the paper game. And there's a lot of things done with that. Now that we're over that securities part, here's what a joint venture is. A joint venture is the undertaking of a specific commercial property by 2 or more companies or persons. Now, that's not quite exactly right, but that's the definition in the dictionary. The syndication versus a joint venture, again, as I mentioned earlier, a joint venture can be created between one investor and one operator. Syndications are for 2 or more investors, and then you're in SEC regulations. You guys, because you're in the internet world, I'm not. I have a great internet guy. He was a programmer in the Air Force for over 20 years and used to hack into the Russian computers, which is way beyond anything. I can't even operate my phone. But at any rate, never ask him what time it is, because he'll tell you how to build a watch. You know, he's that type of person. But he knows everything there is to know about that. The reason I bring that up today, there's a thing called crowdfunding. How many have ever heard of that? A lot of you, okay. Crowdfunding rule came into play today. Let me tell you what that means. The previous, under a 506 Reg D, means that you could raise maximum $5 million, and you are not allowed, you're forbidden to advertise for investors whatsoever. That's under a 506 Reg D. 506 Reg B and Reg C now come into play today. And for the first time in history, you are allowed to advertise for investors all over the world. Let that sink in for a second. That means you guys could set up a website and you could advertise for investors all over the world starting today. Do you know how strong that is? In syndications, we have never, ever been able to advertise at all for investors. Never. You had to have a previous relationship with them. Like right now, I can't talk to any of you folks about a syndication today. Tomorrow I can, but not today. I don't make these rules, folks. But you got to obey the rules or you go to jail and pay fines. And it's the same way, like my colleagues back here has been speaking to you about artificial entities. You obviously always want to be in an artificial entity doing business. You never want to do business as an individual. If any of you wanted to sue me, good luck. There's nothing in my name. You wouldn't even get this tie because I borrowed that from Nick. He said I had to have a red tie. I had a tie, it had some red, but it didn't have enough red in it. And he said, no, you got to have a red tie for the camera and stuff. I said, okay. So it's interesting how these rules come into play. But I'm not the SEC. I don't make them up. And let me tell you something. The SEC is 10 times worse than the IRS. That's no kidding. I'll tell you a short little story. A friend of mine, he used to sell insurance and securities and stuff, and he went to see an older woman who she had lost a lot of money in a variable annuity. She was a senior citizen. She shouldn't be in a variable annuity. But anyway, he went to see her, and he said, well, who's this company that you bought the product from? Because this is not suitable for you. And she said, well, this company. So he pulled up his laptop, looked it up. He says, well, they're under investigation by the NASD back then, and which is now FINRA. And he says, they're under investigation. He says, if I were you, I'd write a letter to them and deal with them. I'm not going to sell you anything. And he left. Well, she called the company. Company invited her up to Palm Springs, wined her and dined her. And Matt Hurd write a letter to the SEC. Well, the next thing you know, my friend, he had to go down to the SEC, and he had to pay a retainer to the attorney, 25 grand. And they investigated him, brought him in the office 9 times over the year. Now, keep in mind, he didn't sell her anything. And he said, all I've done is showed them on your website that they're under investigation. At the end of the year, the NASD said, well, you probably didn't do anything wrong, but we're going to fine you $40,000, and you have to surrender your license until you pay the fine. And with a lot of adjectives, he said, keep the license. I just won't be in the securities business anymore. That's how crazy it is. So when you get into certain investments, you have to do a lot of things. Now, big companies, the big major brokerage, Goldman Sachs and Chase Manhattan and all the other big ones, they'll sell a whole lot of product. And then they'll get under investigation by the SEC. And they might have bilked investors, for lack of a better term, or it wasn't a suitable product, whatever, out of $100 million, okay? They pay a $10 million fine and admit no wrongdoing, and they stay in business. So the big guys can get away from things, but little guys can't. And I'm a little guy, as it were. I keep hitting this thing. Anyway, so you have to be very, very careful how you do business. A joint venture is a different thing. You and I get together, we agree what we're going to do, and we go forth and we do some business. Everything's fine with that. There's no problem. There's no SEC involved because there's only one operator, one investor. That's it. So the type of real estate joint ventures you can do, again, a flip-type joint venture. And what I mean by that is that you go out, and I go out, and I look for it because I can talk to you. See, we're talking about joint ventures now. I'm not talking about a security. Joint venture, I can talk to you a little bit about if you get the drift. Okay? Everybody's nodding, so you get the drift. So what I do with my years and years of experience is I can find properties in places you'd never think to look, and I can get them for deep, deep discounts, and I don't mess around with banks. I buy for cash, and the reason I buy for cash is because you can get the best deals. How many have heard cash is king when it comes to buying? Of course it is. And you got to be right there, Johnny, on the spot to write that check to get the deal, because you can't sit around and wait and wait and wait. And we're going to dance around with a bank 30, 60 days or something and maybe get the loan. That deal's long gone. Follow me? You got to move on it. Now, when you get the property like that, you want to, if that's your strategy to flip it, I look to buy for 30 cents on the dollar. I look to quickly sell for 70, 80, 90 cents on the dollar. I'm looking to move it quickly. You can make a nice profit doing things like that. It takes a lot of research to locate the property. That's a big thing. And I'm not an internet guy, so I don't do the research, but I have somebody who does that. I'm not an attorney. I have an attorney who handles all my stuff. I'm not an accountant. I don't do paperwork. I'm a real estate guy. I know how to buy real estate. I know how to sell it. I know how to move it quickly. I know how to make it do unique things that most of you have probably never heard of. I was talking with one of my colleagues back there, just to give you a couple of deals. How many have heard of a gold clause in a contract? Nobody. Well, let me tell you what a gold clause is. A gold clause is something that was quite common in contracts prior to 1933. And that's before the government stole the gold from the people, back in Franklin Roosevelt's day. And they used to have gold clauses in the contracts. Now, what that means is that, let's just say for today's sake, let's say an ounce of gold is worth 1,000 and the rent is 1,000, just for round numbers. So with the gold clause in the contract, as time goes on, long term, if you're holding the property, then if the price of gold goes way up, you're losing money still collecting that $1,000 rent, right? So by being the owner of the building, the leasee has to abide by the standard there that anytime you can exercise, you don't want the 1,000 cash, you want the 1 ounce of gold. Now, I don't care what he paid for the 1 ounce of gold, 1,000, 500, 2,000, 3,000, doesn't matter. So it's called a gold clause in the contract, and that's something that can protect you long-term against inflation problems. You could tie it to anything. You could tie it to silver, tie it to gold, tie it to the price of corn, whatever. You're tying a hard commodity to a piece of paper, but primarily it was a gold clause in the contract back then. Something that's kind of unique that people don't hear about today, because gold's only been legal to own since '86, when Reagan put gold and silver back into coinage, even though the price is way inflated, or the price is the same and the paper is deflated, however you want to look at it. But a gold clause in the contract is something that's unique, just to give you one example. So also, again, with a hold, what do we do with holds? What I do, personally, is I look to buy for about 30 cents on the dollar for a long term, for an apartment or something. Let's say, just use round numbers, an apartment's worth $10 million, I get it for $3. I have ways, which I'll get into in a little bit, of how I get that property fixed up for free. I fill it up with tenants. I get the rent guaranteed 80%. And then at that point, I run down to the nearest bank. We paid cash for the building originally, so there's no debt on it. But I run down to the bank, and now I get a refi loan. A refi loan is very different from an acquisition loan. Banks do refis all day long. So if I walk into a bank and I say, hey, I got this property, it's worth $10 million, debt servicing $10 million, I want to borrow $3, do you think a bank's going to turn me down? No. In fact, it's called a non-recourse loan, which means nobody even has to sign for the note. All they can do is, if in a matter of default, they go to the building to collect. They can confiscate, foreclose on the building. But they can't go after anybody individually for a deficiency judgment. So by doing that, I might get together with an investor, say, hey, you got $3 million? Fine, we go find an apartment worth $10 million or whatever kind of, I'm just using apartments for an example because there's all kinds. But you find something that's worth 10 for about 3, you buy it for 3, we fix it up, make it maximize, run down refi, give the owner back his $3 million, or give the investor back his $3 million. Now the investor's in it for nothing. I'm in it for nothing. We have our wonderful, beautiful tenants paying off the note. We split whatever we're going to do, the cash flow, the tax breaks, any possible appreciation, and so forth, and we have various exit strategies that we can do down the line. 1031 exchanges and so forth, sell the building, split the money up accordingly and so forth, whatever the agreement was. So I don't like to get notes on properties, as it were. I like to just buy for cash, and then at that point, I want to figure out how to get the money back first. Then it doesn't matter what happens. The building can burn down. We'll collect the insurance. Nobody's out any money. Make sense? It's a different sort of way of buying real estate than you're used to. Most people they go to Century 21, they buy a building for retail or a little under retail, they go get bank financing, they put 20% down or whatever the bank requires. They got to jump through a lot of hoops with the paperwork and so forth, and then they're stuck there for 30 years making payments. I think that's insane. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 30 years? Could you lose your job? Could you go broke because of illness, death in the family, something like that? Sure. When you buy for cash, there's none of that. Do you know why there's so many foreclosures in America? Debt. If people owned all the real estate in 2008, and even though the banks were going broke, there'd be no foreclosures because nobody had any debt on the property. Nobody could file bankruptcy if there's nobody to put in the column that you owe money to. I mean, have you guys thought about some of this? You know, people keep, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, if the bank says, we'll give you 30-year loans or 15-year loans, it's good for the bank, it ain't good for you. If you ever stop to figure out the amount of money you pay on a 30-year mortgage, you buy the bank 2 houses and you get 1. Why would you do that? You guys have an opportunity here in the internet marketing. I don't understand the business, but you have an opportunity to make a ton of money. But now what are you going to do with it? Going to put it in mutual funds? We had a saying when I was in the business. The house made money, the broker made money, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Right? So you have to understand a lot of these different investments that are out there. If it's good for the other guy, it's not necessarily good for you. And you gotta figure out, your money is called a currency for one reason. It's flowing all the time. That's why it's called a current currency. Don't know if you guys ever figured that out. Anyway, again, with the discount notes, we can do the same thing with paper as we do with the building. There's a number of people out there that teach how to do this different stuff. This isn't taught to the general real estate public. The general real estate, 95% of everybody who gets a real estate license is out of the business in the first year. 95%. That's the worst retention rate I ever heard of in my life. You don't hear 95% of everybody who gets a doctor's license or a lawyer license is out of the business in the first year. You don't hear that. But it is in real estate. You know why? It's work. And they don't teach you anything except to do, they have a little training thing how to do that to generate money for the company. But you're doing lots and lots of work, and you make a commission that they're going to try to cheat you out of anyway, your buyers and sellers. Now, a lot of people that go to these real estate investor gurus, they're at least teaching you a little something that might be okay for you, but the average is, again, 95% of everybody who buys a real estate program from a guru never does anything with it. 95%, same ratio. They take it home, they put it up in the closet, say, I'll get to that one day. One day never comes. That's not a day of the week. Or someday is not a day of the week. Or they take it and they might read it and say, well, I'll do this part-time between my job. You don't have the time to do that. The greatest investors are doctors. All doctors want to invest and they make a ton of money. But they don't have the time. They're seeing patients. You guys don't have the time to do any of that stuff for the simple reason you're going to be making money on the internet. Make sense? So the simple rules to follow: before you ever invest, you get a disclosure statement from a real estate syndicator, which is called a prospectus, and see how the program is structured and the risks. That's how syndications work. But you guys, as of today, you have a unique thing. This is the first time that you've ever been able to market and advertise for people all over the world. You could set up the website to where you punch the button, however it works, I don't know. And it comes up in a different language. Comes up in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, whatever, German, doesn't matter. So the website could be developed in that style. You can advertise all over the world. Think about that. Now, the money has to go through what's called a qualified portal. That's a fancy word for a broker-dealer. So the money comes through a broker-dealer. They take their fee off of that, and then the money goes to the project. Also, the big different thing is you've only ever been able to raise in a 506 Reg D, you've only ever been able to raise $5 million. Now the new number is $50 million. $50 million. Could you buy some real estate with $50 million? Better than $5 million? These are some unique things. I'm going to turn you on to one of the best things that there is, which you don't know what you don't know. I didn't know until a few years ago when somebody taught me. And if I would have known this, what I know now, I'd have been doing this when I was 20, which was a couple hundred years ago. The difference is a charity, a nonprofit, and a for-profit are two sides of the same coin. I never knew that. Tell you a quick story. Everybody's heard of Bill Gates. He has a charity. He invited Warren Buffett up, and he says, Warren, let me tell you about charities. And Warren says, yep, I'm giving all my money away to charity. Then you had, and a charity is not a security, by the way, so we can talk about this. You might have read about a year and a half ago that there was 59 billionaires that Buffett and Gates invited up to Washington for a conference. Anybody read about that? You read about that? Okay, a few of you. 59 billionaires came up to sit down with Buffett and Gates. After the meeting, they all came out and they said, yep, we're giving away all our money to a charity. Now, why do you think all these guys are doing that? Because they're stupid? Because they want to be nice guys and help people? Most of them, if you ever meet them, if you gave them a piece of real estate and you said, here, this is for free, they'd say, can you do any better? This is the general type of person that it is. So, but they all agreed to do that. Why do you think that is? Because taxes are coming down in this country through the roof. We've had the debt double. Obama wants to take it to 35 trillion from 17 and change where it is now. You guys get to pay the taxes on that. Now, I don't, because I have a charity, see? And my charity is forbidden to pay taxes. It's called tax exempt. I don't care if they raise taxes to 200%, 300%. Doesn't make any difference to me, because I can operate in the charity and make a ton of money and never pay taxes. Now, I'm not the charity, you understand. And again, there's a for-profit and a not-for-profit, and it's how the two of them work together. There's a fine line there that the IRS draws, and they say, here's the rules and regulations, like the SEC. And you better obey those rules, or you go to jail and you pay fines, and they take your firstborn and throw them in the fire. I mean, that's how it is. They're just really, really strict on that. So you have to know these rules. I don't know them all, but my accountants do, my attorneys do, the people I deal with do. I'm just a real estate guy. I just know how to buy real estate cheap, sell it quick, or how to hold it. I don't property manage it. I manage the property managers. So I understand how to do that. That's the key, because if you have a lot of properties all over the country, what are you going to run around and everywhere and try to manage those? You go crazy. So there we go. Now, a charity, per definition, it's a provision of help or relief to the poor, almsgiving, something given to help the needy, alms, an institution, organization, or fund established to help the needy, benevolence or generosity towards others, or toward humanity. That's what a charity is, per definition. Now, Fix America Now is my charity. You can become a fan of Fix America Now. Fix America Now, fan? Get it? Okay. Now, here's who we help. We help children, veterans, seniors, handicapped, and low-income people. Those are the 5 groups I go after. But my charity does something unique that no other charities out here are doing that I am aware of. If they are, it's a surprise to me. And the difference is I have the real estate component part in the charity. Give you a quick example. There's a Swami kid that I know here, real nice kid. And so the Swami, he says, hey, he says, I got a bunch of money from Steve Wynn here, and we fed 1,700 people, Thanksgiving, turkey, and so forth. I said, hey, that's great. What are you going to do next year? He says, what do you mean, what are we going to do next year? I said, well, you got to go back to Steve, and you got to get some more money, or somebody else to get some more money to feed and do the turkeys, right? He said, yeah. I said, why don't you raise the money and buy a turkey farm? And then you have turkeys year after year after year after year, and you never have to go get money again. You just get it once for the turkey farm. Make sense? I'm giving you guys a big overview. You got to kind of fill in the blanks because I'm on a time limit here and what we can do. But I help these groups of people, and they all need help. Everybody can agree right now that America is in a recession or depression, and a lot of people need help. And the government is wonderful on helping people. HUD, for instance, in case some of you didn't know, they run all the real estate in America, as it were, for the government. And when they, FHA, for instance, when somebody has an FHA loan and they default, the bank doesn't foreclose. They send that insurance policy in, which is what FHA is, to HUD and says, hey, pay this deficiency. So they do. And then HUD gets the property, and then HUD forecloses. And then during the first 30 days, HUD sells to two groups only, first-time home buyers and 501c3 tax-exempt charities. Nobody else gets a shot at the property for 30 days. Gee, I get to cut in line in front of everybody else. That's just HUD. That's just HUD. I don't have time to go into all the other ramifications of this, but so that you folks get the idea. Now, I help out with all of these different things: housing, farms and food, thrift stores, education, health and wellness, small business assistance, and so forth. Every single thing I do in the charity, virtually, not everything, but virtually everything, has a real estate component part to it, or I don't do it. Housing, obviously. Farms and food, help people out, feed them, so forth. Food pantries, as they're called, or soup kitchens is the old word. Thrift stores, clothing, cars, different things, all personal type property. Education, we teach them financial education there for free. Health and wellness, eventually we'll get into that. We're not now because we got to see how Obamacare shakes out. It's either going to go forward or get changed or who knows what. It's a big mystery right now. And then small business assistance. SBA loans, they give you 85%. Our charity can contribute 15%. So the types of charity giving that people do is cash, all types of personal property, service, labor, and time, and all types of real estate. My charity takes a charitable donation of real estate. I get real estate for free. Well, why would people give it to me for free? I'll tell you why. Let's say you needed a $100 grand write-off for your company. Got to get it right away. And you could run down to a tax deed auction or something, and you could pick up a property for 20 grand that's worth 100, donate it to my charity. You get the full 100 write-off the next day. That's by law. I don't make the laws, folks. It has no difference is what you paid for it. It's what it's worth based on an MAI appraisal. So how much, I had a friend that Nick put me in with. I was talking with him. He runs a hedge fund. I won't mention any names, but he says, really? He says, you take the charitable donation of real estate? I said, yeah. He says, how much can you take? Almost fell off my chair. How much can I take? All I do, pal, is give you a receipt that I received the property, the charity, and you put that with your accountant and the appraisal and send that into the IRS, and you get the write-off. How much can I take? I can take trillions and trillions of dollars of real estate. Now, what do I do with the real estate when I get it? Gee, I got free real estate. What can I do with that in my creative way? I can do a lot of things with it to help out a lot of people. As I'm on the board of directors are not allowed to make any money whatsoever. However, there's a lot, employees can make money. Employees can get a lot of different benefits and so forth. Fix America Now, we started it here in Nevada. We're registered in California, Arizona, and Utah, but we're going to fix America. So we're moving east, as it were, and north a little bit. So there's a lot of different things that you can do for good, and you can help people, and you can make a lot of money at the same time. Now, in that fine line, how a charity deals with the for-profit corporations is how over here in the for-profit world people can make money. I can't get into a lot of details about that because time is short, but at any rate, again, everything I do has a real estate component part. So there's just, I should have skipped up a little bit here, but anyway. So the donation of real estate is one way. The charity can buy real estate from HUD first. Could it turn around and sell for a profit, small profit, medium, large profit, to a for-profit organization? Sure. It can do quite a lot of things. When you get an apartment building, you can fill it up with Section 8 tenants. Section 8 guarantees 80% of the rent. 80%. You only got to chase a guy for 20%. If he doesn't pay, you throw him out, and you get a new person right away, and there's a 5-year waiting list on Section 8. The government has problems. The government created most of the problems, but they have the problems. And since they have the problems, they have to fix them, but they don't know how to fix them. So they need experts, if you will, like me in real estate who know how to fix them. Also, they give us grants. If the property is run down, we can get free money to fix up the property rather than have to put our own money into it. There's a lot of things that we can do. So for-profit corporations, they can work with not-for-profit, and anything a for-profit can do, a not-for-profit can do, with a few limitations. So we acquire these different things, as you can see there. I'm running out of time here. The SBA, you can do different things with the SBA loan. They give 85% of the money. Do you realize that 50% of the businesses that get an SBA loan are out of the business in the first year? Well, we're an equity partner for 15%. Gee, could we take over the business? Not that I'm looking to put people out of business, but you have all these different safety valves and different things that you can do. So in conclusion, we thank you for taking the time to be here. You can learn about these little types of investments. Syndications and charities is primarily what I do. I also do joint ventures with high net worth individuals. But they have all different kinds of things, and the rules are changing today for you guys. This is so unique, I will probably never do this again, a seminar like this for syndications to teach people, because I don't need to. I can advertise on the internet. So anyway, thank you all for coming.
Guys, all right, so I know I look at some of your faces, and this is what I see. And I was sitting there, I was laughing, and there's a reason. He can't go into a lot of things. So you guys ready for a real brief summary? Okay. So you ever watch like kung fu movies, and they're like talking for like half an hour, and they're like, what did he say? He's like, you want a Happy Meal? So that's what it's going to be. It's like, I'm going to do the Happy Meal. Okay. So you guys are going to go out there and you're going to make money, okay? One of the things that is a benefit to you is to have a place for the investments to go into. But let me talk to you something because of the traffic that you're able to build up through the internet. They talked about crowdfunding. You're familiar with that. It was 5 million, it's going to 50 million. Okay, now I want you to think about that. How many people are on the internet? Like 4, right? No. There's a few, right? And let's not just think about here in our country, but let's look at stuff internationally. And let's not just think about marketing on the internet to 330 million people when there's another 9 billion people that you personally have the opportunity to market to. So if you're out there driving traffic, and let's just say that you could offer a syndication to go into real estate. You've only got $5,000. Somebody else has got $5,000. But you've got 1 million people that want to put in $5,000. Is that a pretty good amount of money? And what if you could have the same buying power, you yourself, and watch your money sit there and double and make a great rate of return, and you pulled all these people? Why? Because you're able to attach to them through the internet. Would that be big? Absolutely. Do you want your money working for you? Whether it's $5,000, $50,000, $500,000, or $5 million, it doesn't matter, does it? So, do you have the same ability to get in the type of investments that the other people, that the high net worth individuals are getting into? Absolutely. We are creating those vehicles and syndications to allow you to get into them. But they're only beneficial if you take advantage of them. Okay? Remember, you have your business. You're going to separate your personal business from your personal life from your business life. First things first, right? No commingling. Set up entities and things like that. That's going to be very important. Establish business lines of credit. Why? Because they are the bloodline of your business, correct? Do you use your personal own money to go in there and necessarily fund the business? No, it's a bad practice when you can use OPM, other people's money, correct? That's what we want to do. Now, when other people's money goes and allows you to do campaigns to bring you more income into your business, now you have cash. You pay your bills, correct? Now you have extra money. What are you going to do with it? Stick it on your mattress? Or are you going to invest it? If you're going to invest it, don't you think that you might want to invest it in the things that the wealthy are investing in? Do you guys get it? Was that a good Happy Meal? All right. Didn't he do a great job, though?